I'll talk loudly, but
One of these others work?
people can hear us. If it works, great. If not, I can talk through things.
It's got to be a little closer to.
Well, I can beep at someone if you want to like press the button. You're okay with that, or I can just do it from here. Is there a broadcast or anything we worry about the microphone?
That's sort of the,
Yeah, it's on.
We can hear you.
Okay. All right.
You just want me to do that.
I can do it from here. Okay.
Just don't hit your head.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so I'm Roger Timmerman. I'm the executive director at Utopia. I've been there as the executive director. We were just talking about that. I was like, I guess it's been 6 years. I had been there for about 8 years before that, but left for a number of years. So, anyways, I got a lot of years with Utopia. Some of the bad years, most of the good years, though. You know, if you know the history, it was a bit of a rough start. But we've largely turned things around. That doesn't mean we're out of the. You don't have to do that for me.
Just want to make sure it gets recorded.
All right.
And so you got something to set that computer on.
We could donate an HDMI cable for you next time. Order one and send it to
there you go.
So, you know, it's not like we're totally in the clear. You know, the city is still making payments on the original phase of the project. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So, who's Utopia? Anybody who's not familiar with it, just a quick overview. It was originally this partnership of 11 cities. Technically, there's more, but there was 11 that went in and said, let's do it, and let's bond, and let's build network and do it. So we consider those our founding pledging members. You got Tremonton right there on the list. Then we have partner cities, and that's the newer, more recent stuff. Of the founding members, most of them are UIA members as well. Tremonton is not, but we've kind of said, nah, good enough. So as far as the benefit and situation and everything, I think you're part of the fold, but there's a little bit of like, okay, well, this contract, not technically, but you know, as far as investment and growth and all that stuff, we anticipate, you know, good benefit for the city as we grow things at UIA. Generally, UIA is in a position to say, hey, when we have benefit and upside at UIA, we take on more of the burden at Utopia, and so that frees up money at Utopia and puts Utopia in a better position financially to make increasing payments on the debt. And so that's kind of been the approach. So UIA is, I don't have that on this slide, but UIA is basically Utopia Phase 2. It was created in 2009 and for the purpose of getting it right. And it bonded for more projects to really finish off what Utopia was meant to do. And we talk about both of them as Utopia Fiber collectively, but you have Utopia Phase 1, UIA Phase 2. We've done some new partnerships, and I'll talk about how that's good for us all. First with Woodland Hills, we built that one out. Idaho Falls, we have a partnership. They own that one, but we are like the operating partner for that, and it's a source of revenue for Utopia, not UIA, so that helps us financially at Utopia. We're up to about 3,000 customers on that system, and so we didn't actually pay $1 for anything there, but we make money off of that system in partnership, so it's a really nice structure. Morgan City is a UIA project. Most of these are UIA, where UIA financed the project, but then builds it and grows it. And if we do well, then we do make some money on those projects, but we also take on liability and have to kind of reinvest and grow in those. We've had to do that here in Tremonton. So you say, is there any UIA involvement here in Tremonton? Yes, there is. Tremonton has continued to cost us money because we keep having to build more. You keep growing your city, and we haven't gone back and said, Utopia needs some money and more backstop or more bonds to pay for that infrastructure. We've kind of said, let's just lean on UIA to pay for that, and then we'll get customers, and then that'll pay back into the system, and then some. And then that continues to help the financial position of both agencies. So you've benefited from UIA even though technically you're not a member of it. Clearfield, so Morgan City was UIA project, West Point, Clearfield, those are all done. They're built citywide. Pleasant Grove and Syracuse are under construction right now. Bozeman abuts Bozeman, Montana. That's a structure like Idaho Falls. It was not our debt, it's not our ownership, but we're the contracted partner to make it happen. And for every customer, we get a revenue share for doing it, and it should be a really good financial benefit to the organization to do that project. And then Santa Clara and Cedar Hills are the two most recent. Those ones aren't under construction. Well, they kind of are. There's not like drills moving yet, but the engineering and permitting and some of the hut placement has started in those cities. And so those are the most recent ones. I've got some dots there. We were talking with lots of other cities. Keep trying to get Garland to respond and get it on their agenda. They've expressed some interest. We're like, it's neighbor city. It's right here. It'd be so easy for us to just grow into that city. But again, we kind of need that partnership. It's not so much that we can't make the finances work. The finances work great, but it's political, right? We want partners where the city partners with us, and we know that they're going to be good partners and will be good partners. And so kind of want that approval as a formal action from city council before we go and do a project.
Roger, can you talk about those scenarios where UIA is paying for the project, but there's an obligation from these cities who come in partway through the process? Can you explain that? Yeah,
so UIA issues the debt, but we go in there and say, we need the guarantee. Like, we don't have any taxing authority. We don't have any way to guarantee those bonds that we issue for those projects. So we go to the city and say, we need you to guarantee not the whole project, but the first phase that gets us to a break-even scenario on the revenues to cover the debt. Now, above and beyond that, UIA will pay for it, but also get additional revenues, and it kind of becomes this ongoing revenue and debt growth over time, which is generally good for us. We do really well financially on those. But the city does have to come in and say that first phase of the project, we're going to provide a revenue guarantee tied to the cost of the original first phase of the project. And that, to simplify it, basically we peg it at, it means like 30% take rate. Some cities it's like 40%, some it's 20. We've had some that are 120%. We're like, that doesn't pencil. That one needs some subsidy or some help. It just isn't going to happen. And we wouldn't ever do a project like that because obviously can't get that sort of a take rate. But with Garland, it was like, hey, this isn't too bad. We don't have to build 100 miles to get to your city. We're already in your city providing services to the schools and other locations in the city. We already have revenue coming from that system. And so that one actually penciled at a pretty low risk for the city. I think it was like 30%. And we're like, that's a piece of cake. I mean, we got 40+% in Tremont. So why would anyone think we'd do worse than that? We just got to get them to approve that agreement. So anyways, they're a good potential. There's some bigger cities in here, some smaller cities. There's other partnership potentials we're working on outside of the state of Utah. All of those could be really good opportunities. It's fully our intention to pay off all of those Utopia bonds. You'd be like, that's a ridiculous goal. It's so far out of reach. I don't think it is. It's going to take some time. And incrementally, every year we're coming back, okay, we're going to take a little bigger chunk of the Utopia debt obligation. And the hope is that in a few years, we'll say, great, we're now covering 100% of that obligation. And then a few years later, we say, hey, we're starting to pay you back on stuff that was paid in the past on that obligation. And so I don't think the board members or any of the cities involved ever thought that was a possible scenario. But with the trends that are happening right now, and I'll show you some of those, that's what we're striving for. And that's what I see my job is to go after and do that. I mean, obviously, we want to provide a good service. But we also want to take care of the taxpayers, and taxpayers have put some money and investment in this from our cities. And if we have the opportunity to still provide a great service and grow this thing and also pay them back, or at least back to the city budgets, we'd love to do that. So, timeline-wise, I mean, UIA is actually a much bigger thing, both time-wise and project-wise. Utopia was only under $185 million of project. So much of that went into refinancing costs and problems and lawsuits and whatever, that first phase probably only resulted in about $50 million of asset. Unfortunately. So Utopia it struggled. UIA has done over $400 million of financing, and the revenues from those projects are all paying for themselves. There's no cost to the cities on those, and they're profitable. And so UIA is killing it, and continues to do that, and we're just stacking cities up faster and faster into the queue to do those. So anyways, that's good. I want to bring up a couple like examples of cool stuff we've done in the recent history. In all of our deployments, we put in air quality sensors. We work with cities to do smart city applications, and you can always work with us on like, hey, can we work with you on this thing? But a couple of them we gone ahead and done. Like you have this picture on the right. These are live air quality sensors you can pull up in Tremonton. One of them isn't ours, but the rest of them are the ones that we installed at our huts. So any resident can jump on there and look at the air quality and poke fun at people that live in Salt Lake and say, we got better air quality. And, that's why we live up here. So that's available to residents. You are not on the original Utopia network. You are on the new network. This is the third or fourth generation of the network since it was originally built. We have upgraded all the facilities several times, and so now the city is fully 10 gig capable. We're hoping to come and like present a 10 gig certified city award. We're still working on that award. That's a big deal. We occasionally see cities, so happy that they're finally gig enabled, and you're 10 gig enabled. You join a list of just a handful of cities. It's not even all the Utopia cities are done yet. But you have a handful of the Utopia cities that are done citywide, and then you have Chattanooga, and that's it. No other cities out there have citywide 10 gig availability. Now that's not to say everybody signs up for 10 gig, but anyone could. When you have a power user or somebody who really needs it, like your whole system is upgraded, state of the art, fastest in the country. And it's cool. I mean, I'm excited to like make this award and trying to make it cool, like something that lights up and acrylic, like carving or something. Anyways, we'll bring that back to you guys when we do that. But we ought to get maybe some press behind that as well, because it's a big deal. And even in Utah, I mean, there's some of these other cities that partnered with like Google or something. They're like, yay, I mean, they still haven't finished a single city. But when they do, they'll be like, hey, we finally have a gig-enabled city. And you're like, yeah, that's still 2010. I mean, get with the times. We're 10 gig. We've been 10 gig for a number of years here. We just haven't really touted it as much as we probably should have. The other aspect of that is you have the most competitive system in the country. Even that one other example, Chattanooga, they only have one option. It's a city-owned broadband provider, but as an open access system, we have different providers you can pick from. We have 16. There's no other system in the entire country with that many choices. So it's the most competitive. You have more broadband options, more TV options. Several of them have different TV packages and different phone options. You can do your streaming stuff as well, but if you're just like, what choice do you have available to you as a resident of Tremonton? You have more choice than anyone else in the country, except for those other Utopia cities. It's super cool. So we really have guaranteed the future of our residents and businesses to have success with broadband. So that's why we did this. It was a rough start, but we're there. We have it. And it's working really well. A couple of notes on there. We kind of have this pricing that's out there. We see other providers raising their rates. We don't have any plans to raise our rates as we've continued to do well financially. Our costs have absolutely gone up, but we have grown our customer base so much and our revenue so much, we're kind of offset that and get benefit of economy of scale. And so we're kind of holding the line on pricing where we see Comcast and Frontier and other people just kind of tacking up and up and up, even just to keep up with inflation. And yet we're able to do better financially and maintain good prices. Good customer satisfaction. These are just some of the accomplishments. Largest open access, fastest speeds in the country, most competitive. I mentioned those. I have to update this one. We won more schools than any other provider on the most recent UEN RFP. But they just did a new one, and we came in second behind CenturyLink. But that's because most of the schools were in their area. We just were too far away. But we do really well providing services to schools wherever we can get to them. Number one provider of air quality data in Utah, number one provider of smart city solutions. We've got a whole bunch of cool stuff like wildfire detection systems, public Wi-Fi, a bunch of cool stuff. Top net promoter score, top Google rating score. You're like, what about Google? No, we're higher. We're proud of that. So here's the ratings right off Google ratings, and they're at like 3.8 stars. So we're at 4.5 stars. We're very proud of that. We see ourselves as owned by the communities, by the cities and the residents. So if somebody has a problem, it's not about like, can we make money off of this person? They're our owner at the end of the day. At least we see it that way. And so we do go out of our way to make sure people are taken care of. Customer service is very important to us. We want everybody to benefit from this system. Subscriber base. When I started back as executive director at Utopia, we had 14,000 customers. We have, needs to be updated a little bit. We're about 45,000 customers now. So just in the last few years, we've really grown this thing a lot. It's not just me though. It's just demand, COVID, remote work, great team, great city partners. It's all contributed to a lot of success. Couple stats here, 2.4 million feet of fiber installed last year. It's huge. We're internet providers, so now we're up to 16. Good ratings. These are the recent take rates across all our cities. The ones with low take rates, you'll see are asterisks, and that's because they're brand new. We haven't had a time to market. You know, when we build a neighborhood, it has 0% take rate, right? So it takes some time. For all of the cities that have been completed, we're up in the high 30s or better. And so Tremonton, you're pretty good there at 40.84% and growing. I think we were above 40% before, but it kind of went down because a bunch of new parcels were recorded and then the number went down, but we didn't lose any customers. The denominator gets bigger sometimes. But we look at that number and say, even though that's considered a very successful take rate, we still think, why do people not have it? There's still a lot of people out there who don't. And we'd love to be the best option for everybody. And there's different programs. There's low-income programs that have become available with the emergency broadband benefit that gives you a $30 discount on services. That's available today through some of our service providers funded by the federal government. There's different promotions. Some of our pricing has just gotten better over time. And more streaming options have made it easier to cut the cable or get off satellite TV services like that. The very best services out there now are streaming services. And you know, sometimes there's an obstacle like, well, I like the Jazz games. Well, now you can get Fubo TV, which has the Jazz games. And oh no, now I like this thing. And there's a streaming solution for every situation now, and that wasn't true in the past. So more and more people are able to switch over and benefit from the system now. This is our revenue situation. So you see Utopia revenue, people back in 2015 just assumed that we would churn off customers and kind of die financially. But these new partnerships and growth and the offsetting of costs with UIA have actually allowed us to kind of turn that back around and grow it. So that blue line has actually gone up, not as aggressively, but it's gone up without any new investment. We've not borrowed any new money at Utopia. Utopia or UIA, the red line, has issued lots of new bonds and built new networks, and so its revenue has grown, but so has its debt service. Then this is the UIA only chart. You see its debt obligations are represented by these lines. They're kind of stacked here, so we've kind of taken on this obligation. But our revenues far exceed all of our debt obligations, and our operating costs come in here. But the delta there of what actually would represent profitability, it continues to grow. And so that enables us to pay more to Utopia in offset of costs, also to reinvest in growth, pay for things like in our cities to add new huts and new neighborhoods without having to go back to the cities and ask for money or finance it there. And we haven't gone back to the cities to ask for pledges or anything for a very long time. This is a comparison of take rates between cities. You're the dark blue line right here. So as I mentioned, you were a little bit higher and then it kind of dropped, but it's going back up. That wasn't a drop of customers, it was just addresses. This is the availability of addresses in Tremont. So as we build network, obviously that gets bigger as you have more and more homes of availability that goes up. Customers have gone up like this. So look at this, back in 2014, just under 300 customers on the system. Since then, now we're up to about 1,300, over 1,300 customers on the system. So it's definitely gotten a lot more popular in the city. And there's no reason to think that doesn't go up. So we're sitting there saying, hey, this is great, we're at 40%, but if that trend continues, we'll be talking about 50 and 60% here in a couple of years, which would be great. Yeah, this is your take rate over time. See where that's at. It's been very good growth. More people switched over to Utopia. And that's all I got to present, so.
I remember the pain of holding that thing over at the, and trying to go to that investment company from Australia. And,
Worry, yeah.
oh,
I'm glad that fell apart. I mean, that was, when I came back to be executive director, one of my primary conditions is the first thing I would do is going to kill that contract and get rid of them. Or else there's no way I'm coming back.
Yeah.
It was a bad deal. So
Yeah.
it's been,
now we look at it and in hindsight, it's like, yeah, obviously it was better to stick with it and see this through. And with consumer trends and remote work and all the stuff that's happened, now it's all taking off, and we should be very glad that we still own this as cities. We'll see a lot of good long-term benefit.
we need to leverage that information on, the greatest or one of the fastest networks in the nation. Testing.
I remember that, I remember the night when we were deciding whether to go join UIA. And I remember that was quite a,
Was that a close vote? Or do you remember?
I honestly don't remember. I know it didn't pass, but I think it was maybe 3-2 or something like that. Remember, Roger?
It wasn't close, I don't think.
No.
The council voted it down.
Yeah, well, yeah, they did, but I don't know what the vote was. It seems like it was like 3-2.
So, I mean, I think one of the questions would be like, what does it mean to be part of Utopia but not UIA? And it's not as good as being a full member of UIA, but there'll be a benefit in the middle somewhere. We do hope to increase the revenues at Utopia as a result of the success at UIA, but there will be some benefit in probably paying off some bonds at UIA, separately from paying off bonds at Utopia. So kind of like, let's kind of balance the benefit between the two. But every year it's a decision. We sit down and say, all right, how much, what's fair to do between Utopia and UIA and all that. And I would expect you to kind of land somewhere in the middle. Probably still be cost to the city for the long run, but you'll see decreasing cost and payment back eventually, but maybe not as fast as the UIA members, but it won't be zero. It'll be, you'll see benefit every year coming back to the city.
So imagine once that debt is paid, then there's some revenue stream coming in, a small revenue stream coming in, huh? From Utopia.
The original agreements anticipated this being a big moneymaker from day one.
Mm-hmm.
So the agreements basically say, yeah, this is how we're going to distribute funds back to the cities. And the legislature has basically said, we don't want to see fiber become an enterprise fund like some power utilities out there.
Mm-hmm.
So even though our documents contemplate that, I think to avoid getting shackled by the legislature, would probably just focus more on reduction of cost. Let's pay off all the debts, pay back money that's been paid in the past by the city. That's a really big benefit to the city. If all of that's taken care of and there's still money at the end of the day, it's probably going to be the thing is to just reduce the cost of services.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, that'd be a good one. Yeah.
Well, Roger, thank you. Any other questions for Roger?
I actually do, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yeah.
Roger, I wonder if you could talk, I think the last time you were here, we talked about businesses. And I think you said at that point that Utopia didn't really compete well with
a business package or business offering, if I remember right.
I think we do now.
Good. That's what I wondered if you
Yeah, we've
could.
definitely gotten new business connections in the city. The big guys over here, I think, are on the network at this point.
Okay, good.
Off to the west, you got all the manufacturing and stuff over
So
there.
businesses, you have a competitive offering for businesses.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot better. I think you're right. The first focus of Utopia just said, "Yeah, we don't want to get in that space. There's already options for businesses," so the focus was on residential. But obviously, there's a lot of revenue in business, and there is more competition, but we've gotten more competitive, us in partnership with our service providers. But I know over the last year to 2 years, I've seen a lot of orders come in for businesses in Tremont. So what I could do is, we don't really share the list because it's somewhat confidential, because it goes through a service provider and they don't like to disclose that they're on Utopia sometimes. And so I can, in a confidential setting, I can go through more detail of how many we have and what we've added and all that.
Okay,
But it has been good. I'm comfortable saying that.
that's good. Yeah. Okay. The other question I had is just the smart city solutions. I think the city would be interested to see what options there are. Is there someone at Utopia we should talk to?
So I kind of got fed up a little bit because we kept saying we enable smart city, and then it was like we just don't have enough resources to like really put towards this. Then we hired a full-time smart city engineer, and then kind of supplemented him. So we have his name's Chaz Nelson. Anyways, I'll put you in contact with him, and now it's almost like a catalog of services, and we don't really do it to make money. It's just like helps us to use our own network, right, as cities. And a lot of cities don't have resources to throw at smart city applications, but we are a better resource now than the last time you asked me that question. Because I remember last time, I think maybe 2 years ago or something, when you're like, "Hey, that sounds great. Let's do this and this and this and this." And I'm like, "Okay, we need to go find someone to do it." Like, we've got the network to support it, but there's still a lot of work in implementing smart city solutions. But we have not infinite, but more resource to help with that now.
Okay, great.
Can you kind of explain what Smart City Solutions is?
It's a whole catalog of things that benefit cities that need connectivity. And so I've got probably like 30 slides on different things we've seen cities do. Sometimes it's us doing it for the city, and sometimes it's the city doing it itself. But like some of the examples would be that wildfire detection system is one that we've put in these thermal cameras that scan high-risk areas. And they'll automatically, like, I'll get alerts on my phone when it thinks there's a fire. And it sends me the image right to my phone instantly. And usually it's not, it's a false alarm. But, we're still refining it. But we had a team of BYU students develop 2 methods of detection, one with artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the other one was like a more statistical analysis using a histogram chart of the images. And it was super cool. And the cost of doing it is just buying the hardware and putting it up, and then we have the network to connect it into, and we have the servers already that do that, and the code was all developed by these teams at BYU, and so it's a pretty cool system. The air quality sensors are super easy. We just plug those in and tie them into the system. We've worked with cities. The ones where we work closely with the cities are like smart irrigation, so they'll just say, "Hey, we've got the system that we bought that can tie back to a server, and we can program all the irrigation and adjust based on weather and temperature and all this other stuff automatically." Obviously, water conservation is important. Usually in that situation, it's the vendor who's like, "I just need somewhere to plug this thing in." And so then we provide the connections and facilitate it. Meter readings, another one like that. So if you have like water meters, things like that they're usually wireless, but we can put collectors strategically across the city so that you get constant readings off of those as if they're all wired in. You only need 1 or 2 for a city the size of Tremont, where you just put in a couple of those, and that'll make it so you don't have to drive trucks around to get readings. You just get them continuously. Benefit of that is if somebody has a major leak, you can notify them immediately rather than them noticing, hey, two billing cycles in, and I'm like, I might have a leak somewhere. So there's a lot of benefit in modernizing your sensors and your data collectors, and one that you had actually asked for before was video surveillance. I think there was a couple of spots you wanted to see that, and we've come up with some better solutions, I think. I gotta talk to our guy that's kind of been doing that. I know he brought in a whole bunch of different recorder systems and cameras and was kind of trying to hone in on a preference, so we can kind of standardize on that. Because what we don't want is every city using a different system and having to support that. So I'm gonna find the best thing that we can support more easily. But yeah, I'll take that as an action item to schedule something with you and our team and kind of go through the catalog. But yeah, Smart City is like, it's all that stuff. Some of it you get even if you're not involved. So whenever there's a traffic signal near our fiber, we connect it for UDOT. And then UDOT ties that into their system, and they have software where they can give the local jurisdiction access in there to, if they have a major event, they can go in there and preempt the controls. They don't have to build their own system or buy their own licensing. They just use UDOT system, and they can issue out permissions to the local city. So that, I mean, you don't have a lot of traffic signals, but you got one, right? There's three. So we have a rodeo or something? I don't know. Major event, something, use that.
Great.
I don't know, there's a ton of different stuff. It's basically anything that requires connectivity, we would love to facilitate use of the network. And usually the biggest obstacle in getting those things up and running is the connectivity, but you've got connectivity everywhere in the city now.
Is anyone playing with a Wi-Fi mesh over their city or areas where it's free?
So Wi-Fi doesn't work well for that because it's so limited in range. But there are what's called LoRaWAN networks that are like low speed but long distance, and they're great for sensors because you can blanket a city and put sensors basically wherever you want them. But it doesn't use Wi-Fi. If you're wanting people to like use a laptop and connect to Wi-Fi, you pretty much have to have one like in front of every house, like because that's just kind of the range. In fact, even a big house, you kind of need 2 access points to cover a big house, right? So there's been a lot of people try to do citywide Wi-Fi. It just doesn't work well. If you have like your Main Street corridor, your little downtown area, you can do that. You can put let's put a Wi-Fi access point every, few storefronts, and then you could have kind of an outdoor area where you had coverage. We do provide it. I would say we provide it. We support a lot of Wi-Fi deployments in parks, so for our cities. So if you guys want us to, I don't know, we might already be or maybe not, but some cities have just said, hey, we want Wi-Fi in all of our parks. And so if you guys wanted that, we can work with you to get, just use the standard ones we've been using in our other deployments. And it's just copy paste from a configuration perspective. We just deploy those access points. So city buildings, parks, and downtown areas, Wi-Fi works, but not citywide.
Hey, just real quick, are we still paying an annual amount? What's that amount?
Close to,
350?
it's high 300s,
Yeah,
close to
300
400,000.
grows, it's beyond 300. I think it's in the mid.
Yeah, I think it's close to,
We could check real quick. It grows 2% every year.
last time I looked, it was like 380.
So what we did a couple years ago, we said, hey, for the time being, until we're in a little bit better financial position, we'll start making the increased amount so that you would only have to pay the flat rate, even though the debt obligations were going up 2% every year. So that should have capped a couple of years ago. And then this year, we're hoping we'll get approval at that probably at our next board meeting in April. We'll have our kind of final budget for the year and be like, how much room, do we have any room to like grow that amount a little bit? At that point, we'll have an answer for you if we can get a little more aggressive with it. But whatever you had to pay last year, it shouldn't go up, even though the debt obligation went up. Your check from Utopia or UIA will cover the other amount.
And we're obligated how many years on this?
2040.
Yeah, it's
2040?
And we're at 387 right now for this fiscal year, 2022. 387,000.
Has it flattened out before this year, or is this the first year you're going to flatten?
this should be the 3rd year.
So there's possibility that we're only 72 or something?
Is that the pledge amount?
Yeah, we've just been budgeting the pledge amount because I know you were paying us back for OpEx. And I know you've told me about trying to keep the pledge amount or the bond amount.
You guys fell in this like gray area because the Utopian, not UIA, and so we're just like,
Yeah.
We think that we'll be able to get you the same payment methodology that UIA and UIA, or Utopia and UIA members will get, but that's not my decision to approve.
Yeah.
So at the next board meeting, we'll be basically saying, this is our proposed payment schedule on that. Our intention is that you would be right in line with everyone else, but it's possible the board could go, wait a second, they're not UIA, whatever. So staff recommendation, you're in good shape, but until we have board approval, I can't commit that that'll be there, but it's probably wise to budget the full amount, right? Better to plan for the worst, and then hopefully we'll have good news for you in April that something like 50 grand of that or something will get paid to you. I don't know what that amount is. Do you know what it was last year?
Well, you guys are paying, you completed paying OpEx with this year's
Yeah,
payment.
this year the plan was to finish off the OpEx, and then there was a little bit more. There was a couple different methodologies of how much to pay back cities, and we went with the most aggressive for each city as far as pay more. And that put most cities in a pay more than the OpEx reimbursement amount. And then it was like, okay, now we need to come up with a different justification for how to pay the cities back. So it's the intention to do it. It's just, we won't be able to call it an OpEx repayment. It'll just be offset of debt payment on the Utopia budget. So it's probably going to be a Utopia decision more than the UIA decision, which is good because you get a vote on Utopia.
Okay.
Anyways, that's all still being worked on, so. And then we'll also, at about the same time, we'll be proposing the budget for next year, which should have an even more aggressive schedule on there.
I'm just trying to catch up. So we started in 2000 on this thing, and then we're obligated till 2040?
Well, 2013 was,
Refinance in
yeah.
2008, that was a 33-year. So the timer started again in 2008.
For 40 years?
33.
33, okay.
41.
If we would have joined, oh, sorry.
That's where the 2040 comes from, roughly.
If we would have joined UIA back then, is there any way of knowing kind of what things would be like right today?
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then I would say you're guaranteed to get as much benefit as any other city would get with the success of UIA. Right now, we're going into it hopeful that the cities will be good to you. But they're not obligated to, and you don't get a vote on the UIA side of things. So it's I don't know. The argument we've made in the past is, because we get asked all the time, why did Tremont and Perry not join UIA? And there was a couple reasons. Some of the reasons were the cities didn't want to do it. And the other reason was the pledge capacity. As the financial analysts looked at it, they said some cities weren't in the same position to pledge that with the same strength as other cities. And I don't know if it was you or Perry, but one of the cities that was the part of the reason was it would have actually hurt the credit to have a pledge from the city because there wasn't as much revenue capacity with that specific pledge. I mean, it's a negligible amount. With you guys are really small, but it was like when you go to a rating agency and you put 20 credits on the line, they look at the worst one and they give you that rating. So there was actually a benefit to UIA by excluding some cities if they had a lower pledge capacity. And that's not to say we couldn't come in with a stronger pledge capacity in a different form, but that was in the mix of rationale, at least on Utopia or UIA's side. I don't know if that ever came to the surface at the city discussions.
I don't remember
You
that.
might have just said, to heck with it, those really screwed up this first phase of this project, and we don't want anything to do with it anymore, but
We'll take that as the reason.
yeah, we fixed things. So again, the cost to the organization to pay you in line with the other UIA cities is a drop in the bucket because you're a small city, and that goes to your benefit, right?
Yeah.
If you were West Valley City,
Be a little
it'd
different,
be
wouldn't
an
it?
enormous financial obligation to pull you into that payment schedule. So we're looking at it saying, from our perspective, it's a drop in the bucket, but it's a political decision, and I can't commit that. It has to be a board decision.
Okay,
We'll know better
in
in a
April.
couple months.
Roger, just to put it in perspective, do you recall Tremont's share? I think we're I want to say 3% or something like that of Utopia.
Something like that.
When you look at it was based on population, if I remember right. So I just know we're a pretty small player.
No less important. One of the times it's a good thing to be small.
All right. Well, Roger, thank you for coming up here and bringing us up to speed, and appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Thank
so
you,
well.
Roger. Appreciate it.
Okay. Should we, let's go ahead, I guess, with, Mark. Do you want to give us a
Yeah.
little update on the, Red Core and branding and?
Yeah, so worked with Rushford over the last 2 weeks, and I gave him this PowerPoint and said these are kind of the deliverables that the city are looking for. So if we just want to flip through them, a lot of them we talked about with him and over the last couple meetings, but to get this, these verbiage and what words we want as our pillars and help us with a mission statement, a vision statement, get the values, and that all will come through their community outreach. So that's the first portion of it. And then obviously get a logo and a tagline for Tree Mountain City that we all agree on. These are all examples. Like I said, I sent him this PowerPoint, and so these were the examples just so he could see what we wanted. A logo that has different color variations, but remains the same. All they're doing is taking away one or two colors so it can go black and white. And then if we have any departments in the city that would wish to stay with the brand, but kind of break away and have their own spin on it, this was an example for Spanish Fork City. You can still totally tell that it's Spanish Fork with the font, with the style, kind of that circle that has a little bite out of it at the bottom. But it's their own. So they would work with us on doing that for any department in the city that would wish for that. And then they wouldn't necessarily revamp our whole website, but they would give us some template pages that would be full of the colors that we would choose, that would have our logo, kind of the watermarks that would help the residents know where to go. The colors, the fonts, and they would give us some template pages, and then we'd either reach out to a professional company and update our web page as well, or we work through it with the city resources that we have. And then all the corporate materials, just as you see there, email signatures, envelopes, letterheads, business cards, all would be branded for us. And then the official seal for the recorder, the mayor's office. And then I think, as we talked about last time, kind of to invite all the departments in and get the employees on board, we would order a whole bunch of merchandise and give them a couple shirts each and a hat or two, and just make sure they have buy-in. But they would have buy-in throughout the process as well as they survey the city council and the employees. Update our city flag to a more simple flag that we'd be able to fly if we wanted to. Give us some examples of designs for street banners and also street signs. I think that's the next one. So in our plans that we've done previous, we've had a lot of emphasis has been placed on like gateway entrances to Main Street on the east side and the west side. So if they could give us some ideas with the new brand on what that could look like and where it could go. As well as wayfinding signs. We're applying for a county tourism grant, and we're hoping to receive that for wayfinding signs, so it would kind of go in conjunction with it, and they could give us an example of how we could use our brand on some wayfinding signage, and then hopefully we get the funding for that to implement it. We just replaced our billboards, but when the time was right, we could do new billboards with the new brand. And vehicle graphics, I think we've already talked about. And then this one, this is just an example of some events that we do. If we wanted to brand out our Heydays celebration as our big city celebration with its own logo that fits within the brand, they would help us with that. Or if we had another idea or another event that we wanted to do. And then obviously the police department will have a big say on how they would like to see their cars branded. The police is a little different because we're the Tremont and Garland Police Department, so we would have to have buy-in from Garland on the font. So this one would be a discussion point with them, and they would be happy to do that with us. And then the fire, I think that was all of them. So I talked to him about all those. He put a proposal together, and in that proposal, it mainly just talks about the process that Red Corps would go through as they went through this branding. But to get all of that and work with us and help us implement it and see it through, the figure was $57,966. So about $58,000. I printed out the staff report from the last time we did this. It was 2014. And the three companies that we liked, one was $68,000, one was $67,000. And then Red was their name back then, now they're Red Corps. They were $34,000, but they were more just the style guide and less going out in the community and doing the other. So really that price, this was 2014, so 8 years ago, it still fits in line with those quotes. And so on our procurement, in our policy for going out to bid and if we have to or not, there is an exemption for not requiring bids. And it's any professional service agreement that the city council approves. Any professional service agreement approved by the city council, procurement offered for a professional service agreement which is approved by the city council. So if the city council felt like it still fell within the bids and was fair and liked the company and liked their proposal, then we could go ahead with that. So I did reach out to I reached out to three. Spanish Fork didn't get back to me, but three of their references. Bluffdale City Mayor and the Springville City Administrator both reached back, both answered. And I should send this to the council, but really the Bluffdale City Mayor said all positive. There wasn't any negative that they had. My questions to him were, how would you say your branding process would you say your branding process was worth the money? How was working with the Red Corps team? What are some pros and some cons of the process? Anything you wish you would have done differently, and any other tips? And again, Bluffdale was all positive. Springville was all positive. They did say that, they just gave us some more tips. Like, branding is really hard. You have to have somebody who's on top of it to keep the employees, making sure that they are following the style guide and following the flyers, and just kind of being the administrator of the branding process. But they both said that it was definitely worth the money, and that Red Corps was a great company to work with. So, any questions?
As I thought about that, I know we're thinking about whether or not we want to do this or not, but our city is kind of evolving. It's changing for the better. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be a good time to also have it change this way because we are evolving and we are changing. So I think it would be a great time to put this in place.
I like the idea that it gives us
Yes.
a mission and a vision, and where we're trying to go through all these changes, and we're getting ready, we got all this growth taking place, and we're trying to communicate better with citizens. I think it could just bring it all together very, very well for us at this point. And I think, yeah, $58,000 is a hit, but that will also kind of help obligate us to follow it, right?
Yeah, and I think too that there are a very few citizens that are making a statement that maybe our city would be changing for the worse, or that our heritage and our the culture that we have, our traditions are going in a negative direction. And I would challenge that, and I think there's plenty of citizens that would challenge that. And I think that as we look at this, like Brett said, we can come up with the things that we're moving in a good direction, which we are. We're moving in a good direction, and our hearts aren't changing. We still have great neighbors. We still have, all the great things that make all the things that make Tree Mountain great. And so we're going to be capitalizing, and it will be we're going to be accentuating the good that we have in our valley. And so I think it's time to do that. Right now is a great time to say, these are the values, this is our mission, and this is the direction we're headed. And paint it the way it really is, instead of the way that very few see it.
And we've got some money in the budget. We could do this.
We do, yes, absolutely. I mean, you get the sales tax report, and you can see that we're ahead on sales tax. I mean, we are going to have some, as we contemplate the next year's budget, and we'll talk a little bit about other projects that we need to invest in. But we could certainly undertake this endeavor and engage the consultant to provide that service.
Well, the other thing that's good about this timing is we're trying to come up with our land use plans and all these other plans. This will just tie everything together, and I just think I love the timing on it right now. So, what did you need from us? A motion to move forward, or what?
I don't know if we can do that right now.
Well,
but
so I think what the next step is, and we'll talk a little bit more, I was going to show you actually the policy so you could see it, because you asked that question last council meeting, Brett, about professional services agreement, so I wanted to show you that policy. So if you're interested in moving forward with Red Corps specifically, what we would do is we'd draft a resolution with a professional services agreement attached and bring it back for your consideration, and that's how you would formalize and approve that. And concurrent with that, we would amend the budget because the budget doesn't include this expense. It wasn't anticipated. So those two things we would need to do.
okay.
So I guess we just need some direction if where you guys are at, if you want to, if you want to contemplate this in a resolution.
That's what I'd like.
How do we all feel?
Oh, I feel good about it. I think it's time. In fact, I think it's the perfect time.
I'm kind of not for it right now. Just me thinking that there's a lot of other things coming down the road, and who knows what's going to change, and so I'm kind of against it.
Okay. Well,
It's on the agenda for the meeting, so we can bring it to a vote there.
why don't we just do that?
Let's do that.
Okay. All right. Let's see, we do have a closed session that we need to go into. We could do it, well, we're kind of at the point where we need to start the other meeting, I guess. Why don't we take a break for about 3 or 4 minutes and then come back and we'll start the regular meeting and we'll take it from there. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'd like to welcome everybody out to our city council meeting this evening. Our guests, those on our staff and city council, we got Sean Warnke. On city council, we got Wes Eastep, Connie Archibald, Lyle Vance, Brett Rhodey, Rick Siemens, Lindsay Nesson, and we got Paul Fulgham, hopefully here somewhere. Mark Christensen, Nick Nesson. Appreciate everybody for showing up this evening and that kind of thing. We're going to begin by having a prayer. If anybody feels uncomfortable with that prayer, then step out for just a moment. Otherwise, Paul, could you give us a opening prayer?
Our dear Heavenly Father, as we come before Thee this evening, we give Thee thanks, Father, for the blessings Thou hast given us and for the opportunity to live in this great country which we live in and the freedoms that we've enjoyed. Father, as the City Council discuss issues with the city tonight, we ask Thee to bless them with an open mind and with knowledge and guidance on directions to go to better our community. Father, we're grateful for our servicemen out that are protecting our freedoms and the rights that they have given us over the years. We're grateful for them being able to lay down their lives when necessary. We're grateful for all that we have in this great country, and we ask Thee for these things. And this we do in the name of Thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Nick, can you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Is there any declaration of conflict of interest for this evening? Hearing none, I guess we'll go ahead and approve the agenda for this evening.
Make a motion that we approve the agenda as written.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda for this evening. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approval of the minutes for February 1st, 2022.
I'll make a motion we approve the minutes of February 1st, 2022.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded that we approve the minutes for February 1st, 2022. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty. We're moving right along here. Next section is a public comment period. This is an opportunity to address the city council regarding your concerns or ideas. We ask you that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. We will have the opportunity to have a little back and forth with you, and if we have any questions for us, if we can answer those questions, we'll try to answer them this evening. If the questions are such that we don't have an answer right now for you, we will try to get back to you within the next day or two with an email the response back to you. All right, your time is yours. Yeah, why don't you come right over here, Karen?
My name is Karen Stokes, and I'm the president of the Bear River Valley Museum. And we would like to do is to build put an elevator in our playhouse. Now, this is a picture of our little theater. Mm-hmm. It's a great little theater. We only have about 125 seats in it, but it has one big problem, and that is these 32 steps to get up to the top of it. And so I've brought some people here with me tonight that are going to tell you why we need this. So Judine
If
Parkinson.
we can just have you come up and then tell us who you are, and yeah, that'll be fine.
Jennifer Lewis was going to be here, but she sent a letter, and she's going to read that and then tell her part. Okay?
Okay.
We'll try to be fast. One of the main reasons why we wanted to start a playhouse was because the school systems are doing away with the arts in the school systems. And it's really sad. And we've seen the benefits of that. We have done I'll read Jennifer's statement, and then I'll say my statement. My name is Jennifer Lewis, and I'm a member of the Main Street Playhouse Board. I became a member after Janine asked me to direct a children's production at the Playhouse. I was pleased to have this opportunity. COVID caused the cancellation of the 2020 school show, and following that, restrictions and overcrowding has taken my program from me at North Park. Lack of participation was not the problem, but the lack of school funding and support. My students were so excited and grateful for the opportunity to finish the show when we were invited to do it at the Main Street Playhouse. One obstacle we face and currently are trying to overcome is the accessibility to the building. We had grandparents who struggled up the long, steep steps and families who actually carried wheelchairs up in order for them to attend. I have directed the school plays at the North Park for 20-plus years and can vouch for the unique ways that they touch lives. They build talents and life skills, give opportunities for social and emotional growth, and provide acknowledgement to many struggling to fit in where competitive dance and sports are not a strength. Any support we could receive from the city to further this cause would be appreciated. We do feel like our community does an amazing, wonderful job to provide sports opportunities for our kids, but we feel like there's a great need for those kids that are not physically able to play sports or physically talented in that area. And I know you support the sports and provide a lot, and that is wonderful. But I have firsthand seen the power of what the theater programs can do for these children. I have taught my summer theater camp for 6 years now. It has been proven that children that participate in the theater do better academically. They do communication skills. My theater teacher, Mr. D. Pace, who is amazing, he often said, if you want to talk about competitive sport or a competitive, unity, set the children to, or have the children a team sport is what I'm trying to think of. If you want to talk about a team sport, have your kids put on and perform a play. And it builds character. Just one really quick story. My summer theater camp kids, we were talking one day, and he said, I had a problem with my teacher. He's a shy kid, and he would get up on that stage and perform. He would come alive. That's one of the reasons why I do it. And he said, I had a problem with my test score because I got an F because the teacher had corrected it wrong. I tried to tell him that, and he wouldn't listen to me. And I went home, and I said, if I can get up and perform in front of 100 people, I can get up and tell my teacher what is going on. And he wrote out his script, and he memorized it, and he went in, and he delivered it. And he says, I want to thank you because I would have never had the courage otherwise. So there's a lot of benefits for doing these summer theater camp for these children. Job interview skills. I mean, I can just go forever on the benefits and what I have seen. The self-esteem, the ability to talk to adults, the ability to talk to each other, to get out of their social, phones and actually interact. So I feel like there is a big need in this community where the schools are going away from this, and any support you are willing to give us would be appreciated.
What was your name?
Judy and Parkinson, I'm sorry. You gotta wrap up. She has to wrap up. She always gets the last.
Okay. One thing that we would like a little help, financial help from this, and another little thing that I was thinking about, we have a hard time with advertising our plays and things like that. We just, we get done with the play and people say, well, I would have come to it if I'd have known about it. I mean, we put them in the paper, we put signs all over town and everything. So I'm asking, and I don't know if you can get this approval, but I hope I can, that maybe when we put a list of the plays and stuff that we have on a flyer, that you would send it out with the bill, with the electricity, or the Tremont City. So think about that, and I think that would be a great idea if you'd let us put that flyer in there with the bills.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do you have any idea of the cost for an elevator?
Oh, we do. We don't even dare tell you.
Tell me, I'm easy.
The cost itself of the elevator is $53,000. And then there's the, put the shaft in and stuff like that. So it's going to come to about $120,000. And we've got, what, 50,000 now, close to that. So we need help. Thank you.
Do you own the whole building or
I do. Yeah, the museum
down
board.
below as well?
Yes, the museum board owns the whole building. And the reason
It's
it's
right
that,
above the museum, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
there's an outside entrance. And the reason that there's that many steps is because when they built the building, they put the walls 17 and a half feet. We could put 3 floors in there, but, it didn't happen. Anyway.
Is your first 70,000 or 50,000?
Oh, well, I've been really obnoxious. I asked people, I've been to Red Mortuary, they gave us $1,000. I've been to, and I'm writing grants. I've got about 4 grants out to Eccles, and I'm 85 years old, and I just hope I don't die before I get this done.
Glad you corrected yourself.
Thank you anyway.
Thanks, Karen.
Bill Rosema, fairly new resident. I got in here while you guys were talking about signage. And, I look at the law enforcement vehicles. I see them. They're fairly new. They look fine to me. They look professional to me. They don't need a paint job. They don't need new graphics. Signage on the streets and stuff, I think that's a complete waste of money at this point, and I just want to say that. My wife and I like to walk down the streets around Tremont, and what we're noticing, and you want to spend some money to improve the community, what we're noticing is a lot of the sidewalks on Tremont Street could use some replacement. This drive-through soda thing over here across the street, I heard them talk about that last year, and nothing's changed. This is a joke. You got people that park on the sidewalk waiting in line for a soda, so if you're a pedestrian, you either got to walk over the top of them or hope there's enough room between the car that's sitting in the street right behind them. It's a bunch of crap. And then the parking situation right there at the corner of Tremont Street and Main Street, you got all these people parked here, and if you got enough vehicles in the left turn lane, you can't get through there. So a lot of that parking needs to be eliminated there so that there's plenty of room for people to make a right-hand turn. Now you go over to 1000 over here. My wife and I like to walk up Tremont Street, down Main Street to the gas station down there, 1000, and then head south. There's no sidewalk over there. It's all dirt, okay? And it's a narrow road. That road needs to be widened a little bit. We need sidewalks there. And then you get down there to Rocket Road, and we make a left. There is no sidewalk there. It's narrow. People fly down that road. It's dangerous. So if you want to improve the community, start with sidewalks. People aren't shoveling the snow off of their sidewalks in the wintertime. We like to walk. They're not doing it. That needs to be enforced. The police department needs to go around, and if they see a vehicle parked in a driveway that's also parked over the sidewalk, they need to cite those drivers. They need to cite them, ticket them, and fine them. The sidewalks need to be open for pedestrians to walk. That's what they're for. And heaven forbid you got somebody in a wheelchair. And then you get out here on Main Street, some of the businesses, they're putting stuff out in front of their businesses, and some of it's too much. It's really impinging on the walkway, on the sidewalk. If you go down Main Street, there's a business down here with a big inflatable pumpkin. Takes up the whole sidewalk.
Yeah.
So I would really like to see some improvements around town that make it a little bit more friendly for people walk up and down the sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
A little shorter. Hi, my name is Chris Danvers.
just recently moved into town from across the country. And I'll say you guys have an amazing town here. I'm looking forward to putting down roots and hopefully getting as involved as I can to help it to stay nice. I got a couple of things on my mind. One, and most important to me, is I've noticed that there is an issue with fast driving in neighborhoods, and it's a great concern to me. As I just recently moved in, my wife actually moved in to our new house maybe 2-3 months ago, and I just recently came in behind about a month ago. After she had been here and I came to see what a wonderful house she had bought for all of us, I was standing outside. It was warm weather, and I saw a group of kids walking down the road in this, it's on East David Drive. And as I watched these kids, and it didn't seem improper for these children to be walking down the road instead of the sidewalk. I think that that's actually kind of lovely that kids would feel okay to do that, especially from the East Coast. It's not quite like that. But my problem was that an SUV came around the bend, and it was going fairly fast, and the driver laid on the horn and didn't slow down at all. And I have an 8-year-old, or almost 8-year-old daughter. We just got a new dog. I've got a couple other kids. I expect grandkids to come and visit us someday. And that put a great fear in me. And now I've told my daughter, I don't want you out in that road at all, because the people here in Tremonton drive crazy, and I'm afraid that somebody's going to hit you and kill you. And I'm sure that's not what you guys want new residents to think. I moved here because I wanted a safe place to raise my family, and I think I've found it, but I'm afraid of the drivers in this town. Now, I've already spoken with one of the local sheriffs. As you know, you move into Utah, you need to get new license plates. They have to come out and fill out some paperwork for you. And I've already asked him, I asked him to please come put one of those trailers out in front of my house. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I want my street to be a safe street. So the most important thing to me at these meetings that I will be coming to is that we make our streets safer for our children. And I'm sure that if they're speeding around corners on East David Drive, they're probably speeding around corners on every other street in town. So if you guys could please do something to fix that, I'd sure appreciate it. I happened to walk in during the presentation for the Utopia Fiber project. I know a little bit about that. That's a business that I've been in for fiber optics and low voltage for 20-some years. And I am one of those residents that moved in who's now working out of their home remotely. I was lucky enough to convince my boss to let me move from Maryland and keep my job. I did notice a couple weeks ago that there was an outage in my area, and it was about 150 people who were down for the entire day. I happened to offer to go fix it for them, but they didn't take me up on the offer. It was out for the entire day. So what I'm wondering is if you guys can find out if there's any kind of redundancy in the city fiber to if in the case that somebody would dig up a piece of fiber, that it may offer another route for the data to travel. That's a fairly common thing, especially in military areas. If there is, it's not in my area, because it only got
went
cut
out.
in one spot, and it took down 150 people.
Yep.
So that is something that could be improved upon.
Right.
And my last thing that I'd like to say, I don't know whether rebranding is a good idea or not right now. I'm concerned about the way the national and global things are. However, if you guys do move forward with rebranding, I would encourage the council to start to think about offsetting some of those costs by selling the products to the public. Maybe getting some buy-in from everybody around town as far as esprit de corps. You know, I'd be happy to wear a shirt that says Tremont, and I'd be proud to say I'm a resident here, and even send some of those shirts and hats and whatever else there is to family to encourage them to come out and visit me in this wonderful corner of the world. And not to mention the buy-in that you might get from the public. It could offset some of the costs that you're going to incur by doing it. You know, maybe if everybody gets behind the town, it could help to pay for it. And honestly, I see not the same logo everywhere. You know, you guys got a really nice logo up here at the top of the thing. What's wrong with that logo? And why do you guys have to go and find somebody to come up with something new? That looks fairly fresh and new in my mind. And you guys could build a flag, you could build a seal, you could do everything with that one little logo, and it can go black, white, or color, or whatever you want. Why are you guys looking for somebody else to give something? I got the sign. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Sorry. Christy Bogut. Nick, what I have to say isn't against you. I do live where Mr. Danvers lives. And we did have the trailer, the speed trailer with the cute little sign. I requested it come, and it was put in front of my house, and I did it. But I also requested that it was patrolled. And Nick was not the police chief then, so don't take offense. Not once did it get patrolled. And we watched it different times during the day. We actually went as far as to say, this is who just about hit that grade school child. We saw it. We watched it. This is the times they're speeding. This is how fast that we figure they are going. And just the other day, my husband said, oh my heck, did you see that car? And I go, yeah, but I know who it is. It's a racetrack. Don't you agree? It is a racetrack. It's see who can drive the fastest in West Holmgren. And it's usually the same people. So that's my tip on that. He is very right. And the speed trailer doesn't work. The people that I called on, and I used their names. I told the former police chief who they were. They pulled up with their child, and it was their child that was speeding. And they both stood out there and laughed and pointed at the sign. So it's a sad thing. It's a parent thing. How you parent parents, I have no idea. Okay, so off what I was going to talk about. It's been a long 2 weeks. It's been a disheartening 2 weeks. It's been a sad 2 weeks for me to hear that in other meetings. We are being put down. We're not rebels. We are not trying to cause problems. We love Tremont. It is our city too. We have heart in this city. By speaking out is our right. We have every right to say what we want to say. When Jordan was here, he said, the planning committee should use best practices. What do we want the city to look like? How do we want the city to feel? That's exactly how he said, and to get public input. You haven't reached out for public input at all. With River's Edge, it was brought up. Yes, I will take a little over 3 minutes, Lyle, I'm sorry. I realize you really don't like me, but that's life. It is life. We do have a future growth map. Yes, it was done in 2016. Mr. Rohde, thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that. Lyle, A moratorium is not against the law. Okay, you call Jordan, you look on the internet, I was gonna bring the whole numbers.
We do it for a short period of
You're
time.
right, 6 months.
Ability to do utilities.
Well-
You can do utilities, we live in the United States, and you can't stop it.
Okay, but Oakley just did a moratorium, like in the fallish, because of lack of water and water concerns.
The utilities,
Yes. And so when you say it's against the law, it's not.
if we have the utilities and do a moratorium, that is against the law.
Well, it's a strict thing to go by. I realize that.
Not strict.
You know, there's a lot. And Jordan said, you know, there's a lot you have to go by. I realize that. We do love our city. And I feel like we have a right to be heard. We have a right to voice our opinion. We live here. And we would hope that you would want to hear that. Obviously, some of you don't. We ask that you come to the table and talk with us instead of sitting behind a table, judging us and throwing sarcasm at us. Unity starts at the top, not at the bottom. If you want unity, it starts up here. One thing I wanted to mention to you. Today I was visiting with a resident in South Tremont, and in a planning meeting, a month or so ago, a developer come in and wanted to add more townhomes and take it from half-acre lots to, just townhomes all the way down to 600 South. When I was visiting with this resident and telling him how, first thing I asked him is, how do you feel about this? I always ask the residents that before I start anything, and then the discussion starts. And the lady told me, and I don't have anything to go on, so I'm asking you. She says, when the townhomes were put in and we protested the townhomes, we were told by the city, they promised it, that the rest of that property would remain half-acre lots and single-family homes. Now, I don't know, other than what she told me. And I says, ooh. I said at a meeting where a developer wants to put it in, and she says, if they do that, the city has broken their promise. Now, I don't know. I'm just giving to you what this resident gave to me. And I hope that we can come to the table and not throw sarcasm or rudeness or arrogance out there. But come to the table and say, ooh, did this really happen? Communication is a big thing. And when you shut the line of communication down and start throwing out daggers, telling people, just move. If you don't like it, get out of here. And that has happened. I don't know that you have said it. I really don't think you have said it. But other people have said it. That's not the right way to go about this. So just consider it.
Thank you, Christy.
I'm Sarah. I'm the owner at Main Street Mercantile right across from Midland Square. And I started the store here at the end of the summer to support our local artist community. And so we sell local handmade artisan goods there. I also started it as a way to try and revitalize Main Street. My husband and I moved here from New Orleans 3 years ago. And so we're very compassionate about community revitalization. And so we saw the opportunity and took it. Been in there several months now. Noticed a major issue with Main Street, parking, which I'm sure we're all very aware. Parking on Main Street is a nightmare. Obviously, the turning lane is also a nightmare too on, Tremont Street here. So I don't know, the idea that I had was initiating 2-hour limited parking on Main Street. I have no idea if that's something we can actually do, if we have the ability in the city to do that, or if that's a state thing. But there are a lot of people who park on the main street and will park there from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. and take up parking. And I've had many customers come to me saying, I would have been here earlier shopping had I been able to find parking. And I hear that over and over and over again, which I'm sure all the other businesses in that 3-block section is hearing the same thing. So I don't know if there's a realistic solution to that. 2-hour parking everywhere I've lived previously tends to have that in your congested areas. Obviously would need to be enforced. So I don't know if that's an option. But I wanted to put that out there. I know my business as well as the other businesses would really benefit from that. But also I wanted just to put out there that I'm really open to working with you guys as a resident, as a small business owner here in town. Whatever you guys need. Like, I'm very invested in trying to get people to shop locally, support our local businesses, bring people in to spend money here, because I know that's really important. And I know, like, I've had conversations with a few of you, more on the way, but I just wanted to let you guys know, like, I am here. I would love to be used in whatever capacity you guys have to kind of help with, Tree Mountain moving forward and really supporting our local businesses. So,
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that a lot. Okay, well, any other comments? Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm Julie Beagley. I also live on David Drive on the corner. So I'd like to agree with the speeding issue. My husband's a runner, and he has had to plan his running routes based on where people tend to not run over him. He has literally almost been hit at driveway entrances. But the other issue, because that's already been brought up and hopefully will be managed, is the loose dogs. The number of roaming dogs in our town. Now, I am dog rescuer, I am dog fosterer, I am dog lover at heart. My dogs have never escaped my yard in 4 years. Now, I have had escape artist dogs in my previous years of life. I understand, like, I have compassion for people who have those dogs that can jump a 6-foot fence. I get it. But it is the same dogs over and over and over, and some of them are dangerous. Just yesterday, there was a dog roaming, not to call out Dr. White, but it was his dog, that had gone probably 2 blocks it had gone from East David Drive all the way up to 300 East by the high school, and was trying to get into someone else's, trying to get to their dogs. And we saw it almost get hit by cars because people don't stop for the dogs. They don't stop for cats. We hear jokes. Well, I'm not at the high school. My daughter at the high school, hearing jokes from kids who make a game of hitting animals on purpose in this town, which is frankly just beyond disturbing, but it's a game and they brag about it. So I don't know, again, how do you parents to parent their kids? I wasn't planning to go on to that, but the loose dog issue is out of control, and it has been for 4 years since we moved here. Animal control, I know other people have complained about animal control. My personal experiences with the animal control officer here have been dead end. Whether it's coming to pick up a deceased animal that we have removed from 300 East to get it off the road so that kids trying to cross the road to go to school aren't looking at splattered guts on the road, that my husband will go out and remove it and put it in a box, that we can't get animal control to come pick up. 3 days I had left him several voicemails. He never did come to get it. I literally tracked him down in town and handed him the box and asked him to take care of this cat. So, and he didn't act affected by it, like, well, I guess you found me. That's like it was a game of hide and seek. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what his job is. I don't know what we're paying him to do, but he does not come pick up stray dogs, and he does not remove dead animals. And my family, and I know that I have several friends in the community, that we do those tasks for him, and we aren't getting paid, and we aren't getting trophies. We aren't doing it for the fun of it. We're doing it because we visit other towns, and I guess because we have these animal loving hearts, we see that and it crushes us, whether it is a raccoon or a muskrat or a dog or a deer. It breaks us, and we don't want to be driving through town and see splattered animals on the ground. And a lot of these animals are people's pets. And it would be nice to be able to let the families know. It's a humane, courteous thing to do. So again, if there's anything within the town that we can do, I would like to offer my services for that. If there is a contact that we can have when we see those animals, if there is a better place that we can take those animals, because I'm not going to put them in my garbage can. My heart can't do that. If someone else needs to dispose of them that way, I understand, but I can't do that. So anyway.
Did you call the city office, Lyle? Can you call
Oh,
there?
absolutely. Call us and,
And they can get the thing
done that, though.
to him?
yeah. We have a pet cemetery but at the end by our house too, so.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah,
brought pets over there. People.
I'm sorry if the animal patrol officer is any of your husband or son or brother or friend, but he's not doing his job. And it doesn't matter what route people go, he's not doing his job. So.
We appreciate that.
Lyle.
We'll,
To the pet cemetery at the end of the road.
Yeah, well, I'll have to tell you about my pet cemetery sometime. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Julie, very much for, those were well taken, so we appreciate it. Any other comments?
I have a quick question. Can somebody identify who represents what part of town so that we know who are represented?
Okay, so we don't have members of the city council who are, a specific area. So Connie is more on the south end of town. Brett represents sort of the northeast side of town. Well, I don't say represent, that's where they're from. And Rick is over by the North Park School. Wes is just everywhere. Lyle is over by the fairgrounds a little bit, and I'm just sort of in the center of town. So there's nobody. We don't have a specific area that we're responsible for. We're all responsible for all of Tremont, and so but that's where we're kind of from. Good question. All right, well, we got a little more to do tonight, so let's move on. We got some new council business. Discussion and consideration of approving resolution number 22-10, authorizing the Tremont City Mayor to cast Tremont City canal shareholder votes to the Bear River Canal Company elections. Council?
We talked about this last time. I
think we just need to make an
I
official
make a motion that we approve resolution number 2210.
I'll second.
Okay, been moved and seconded that we approve, moved by Brett and seconded by Rick, that we approve resolution number 22-10. This is,
Lyle, did you have any questions on this? You weren't.
I'm
No,
sorry.
But it makes sense. There has to be one person that votes, and
Yeah.
you're the,
Well, we have more shares than, I think we can represent the city quite well by we haven't voted, I don't think, unless Roger did in the past. I just know that I've never been voted for the Tremont City. Okay, I guess we'll start on this side.
Rick, aye.
Brett, aye.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Connie Archibald, aye.
Wes, aye.
Thank you. All right, continuation, let's continue on with the workshop agenda. I think we've got the branding part taken care of. Presentation that I wanted to share. Lindsay, can you bring that up? And then just kind of have you pass this on. I'll keep the one with the... So there's been a lot of talk about water, and even tonight we talked about water. And so every month or so, Paul sends out a data sheet showing the amount of water we use, weekly water use for the whole year. We show that, and we show the secondary water use. Well, I got to thinking about that a little bit, and so what I did was I went back to 2018 and I started charting this information, and I'll kind of explain so you can kind of understand what I'm doing here. The orange line, the orange horizontal line at the top is the city's capacity. So this is how much water we produce, how much culinary water we produce. It stays about the same year in and year out because we have the same sources of water. And then down at the bottom, you see the blue horizontal line. That one represents the base water use. So if we took the month of February, and we use that number right there to figure out what our baseline use, so what people use, basically what people use inside of their homes. You can see that figure right there. And then what we have is down at the bottom there, you've got your secondary water use. The next curve up is the culinary water use, and then what we have is the green line, which is the combination of the two. So back in 2018, and this is kind of when things really got started, we've been working on secondary water for a while before this, but this is really where this is really where that started to really make itself pronounced. You can see that our culinary water for about 1 week exceeded the capacity in the city. And this really got everybody kind of worried. In fact, our city engineer at this point basically said that, if we keep this up, we're going to have to do something about it. We're going to have to either this is where that moratorium you brought up, Christy. This is where that could have come into play. It doesn't come into play when we have plenty of water, but it could have come into play right then. That was a good point right there. Okay, so that is where we're at 2018. So let's move on. As we move on into 2019, we started to bringing in more secondary water, but probably more important than that, people started to conserving, and that's what we're kind of seeing there. So we saw that secondary water really hasn't come on yet, but we're starting to, so a lot of those zones were starting to come online and everything, and so you can kind of see that we're just bouncing up against that 1 week, that peak week of the year. Usually about the end of July or 1st of August is when we peak out. Okay, so that kind of shows that, and then we move on to 2020. If I can. Move on there. You can see again, we're starting to ramp up. We're starting to get more and more secondary water online. But what I really want to show you is 2021. This is when things started when we're starting to actually see our secondary water take hold and our culinary water usage starting to decline. So you can see even that peak week, that last week in July or first week in August, you can see that peak week right there. And we still had a pretty sizable amount we had about 7 or 8 million gallon capacity or buffer right there in that week right then. Now, the next one is sort of, you know what they mean when you ever heard the saying when somebody says assume, what that means? Okay, so I'm assuming right now. So we need you to kind of take that into consideration. I did my best job to extrapolate out into 2023. Now, when 2023 comes around, a lot of Zone 5 will be up and going. So that's by you, Chrissy, hopefully. That's by Rick, that's by me, that's by anybody else that lives in that Zone 5 area. But what I really want to show you here is what happens to culinary water usage. What we're doing is we're overtaking with the use of secondary water. We're increasing that amount. We increased to almost 11 million gallons of secondary water. Now that sounds like a heck of a lot of water. And my farming background wanted me to say something else, but I'm going to say heck of a lot of water right there. And really, I mean, 11 million gallons is a lot. But from a farmer standpoint, from an irrigator standpoint, that's 2.4 second feet. Most farmers' ditches in the Bear River Valley flow higher than 2.4 cubic feet per second per week.
What your colors represent, I don't see a label on them.
I did it on the very first one. So the bottom one, the green one, is secondary. The horizontal one is the baseline. The gold one in this case is culinary. And the blue one at the top there, that is the combination of the two. And I should have done that, but I redid this about 3 times and I got sick and tired of trying to go back in there and put text boxes in there. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll just explain it. But anyway, 2.4 cubic feet per second is not a great deal of water. We're servicing basically a big part of Tremonton on 2.4 second feet of water. That's the peak. That's the peak of the year. And then it kind of goes down from there a little bit.
So where you have that one pointing 11 million,
Yeah,
that's the peak that needs to avoid the orange line.
Yeah, that's okay.
Correct?
That's our
yellow line.
Yeah, both the yellow line and the green line. We still have a lot of people using culinary water in the valley, in the city. So that peaks out just like the secondary water does. But the point here is that as we're moving on, and this secondary system is. I apologize if I use the phrase, but it is responsible growth. We have been planning on this for several years, and what we're seeing right here is it's starting to it'll start to take hold, and I think that what we're going to do is build ourselves a buffer for our culinary water, and then as we start to looking at new sources of culinary water down the road, then that'll even help. That'll raise that horizontal line at the top. That'll raise that line, even creating more of a capacity. So anyway, I thought it was really interesting. I started to thinking about this, and I thought, holy cow, how can we show this so all of us can kind of understand what's going on here with the secondary water? Our valley is surrounded by a canal system. And I'll bet you there's not very many people here that even know that the original source of water for the residents of Tremonton was the canal system. They drank canal water. And so when they bonded in those early days, they bonded for water. Those bonds, if you take into consideration the value of today's dollar and the value of that dollar, they bonded for a lot of money, and it was a big deal for a little town of less than 1,000 people. But they did it, and we've had to develop other sources as we've gone along. But I went over this with Paul and Sean and Mark, and we went through the numbers and everything, and we felt good about it. So except for the assumption of the future, but I think what we're going to do is as we see 5 come on, we're going to see the use of culinary water reduce and the use of secondary water replace that.
And Lyle, they've started on, is it 6, Paul, that we're just putting in?
5's up there.
What's down here?
That's 3. So a lot will be coming on 3rd.
Yeah, 3 will be coming on too. If you drive down 1200 South, that pond right next to the canal, you'll see that they're putting the head gates and pumps and all that in there too. So
Good.
that'll go from that way back to Main Street.
Yeah. I think that, we're all concerned about growth, Chrissy. All of us are concerned about growth. And, and I think what we're doing is I hope that what we do is we can talk about it. We've been open to talk about it, and I'm hoping that this is just that one opportunity for us to kind of say what we think too. And, and as we go along, Tremont is going to be fine. Tremont will probably grow. It will grow, but Tremont is going to be fine as we grow. So, all right, let's see here. Any questions on any of that? It clear as mud. I hope it's mud is a good thing, I guess. Most of the time. Okay. All right, I just lost my place. Shoot.
Let's see.
I just way lost my place.
Future road projects.
Okay, can I use your phone for a second? See. I way lost my place. Okay, where are we at? This one here.
Roads.
Okay, that's just a presentation, so we're not going to do any action on that. Discussion of future road projects. Paul, do you want to give us some update on it?
There were some questions last council meeting about roads and what was in the plans, I guess. I mean, nothing's hard and fast. But we've projected and given numbers in the past of what it costs to do the roads. So we put together this, and 10th North that's one of our major roads that we're concerned with. We all know that we have the road right away, but the pavement section, just like this gentleman talked about, 1000 West, without the curb and gutter and sidewalk, the pavement section is big enough for 2 lanes, and at certain points have a turning lane. And that's the same way 10th North was. And our plan in the future is to widen that out to full 66 foot with curb, gutter, and sidewalk, 2 travel lanes, and a turn lane with no on-street parking. That's the only way to make that function with the 66-foot right-of-way is no on-street parking. And so it's broken down, if you look at these, into basically 3 different sections of road work. The first section would go from basically 2300 West to 2660 West, which is the road that goes up to Spring Acres, up to the existing water tanks up on the hill. And to widen that and to bring that up and also be repairing or improving the bridge across the small canal there that goes to Bothwell, which is the Bothwell ditch. The cost of that to do 1,500 linear feet of that road is about $639,000, $640,000. Okay, Nick, Lindsay, and that would be building with curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And part of that is piping storm drain as it comes down the hill and picking up stormwater. Okay, the next one, this would be a section from 2660, where we left off, all the way to 3150, which 3150 is the road that goes up to Country View Estates. And this is supposing that we had some federal monies involved in it, because you'll notice that the road section costs a little bit more. And that is if we can get some federal monies, we have to build it to a little bit different standard, and there's a lot of pre and post paperwork that has to be done with it. Always drives up the cost of a roadway. That's basically 2,032 linear feet of road, curb, gutter, and sidewalk. Dealing with also, as you know, as you go along that road, you get issues with driveways coming in and out, the steepness, and that would be dealing with those to correct some of those. So as we widen that right of way out, that we don't cause homeowners problems with their existing driveways getting out. That section of road would cost $1.6 million to build. And that would just take it to 3150 West up to Country View Estates. Now, if we look at going the rest of the distance, all the way out to I-84, where the city limit starts, that's another 4,200 feet of road to build or rebuild, and that would run us a roughly $3.3 million. And that's with curb, gutter, and sidewalk, dealing along that. So if we look at going all the way from 2300 West out to I-84, we're looking at a total of about $5.5 million to do a project like that. The problem with the federal money is usually you can only get it about every 10 years. And they only loan, or it's a grant, $1.5 million. It used to be $1 million, they bumped it up to 1.5, and that's with a 6.77% match. But you see, we'd probably have to match a little bit more to be able to make a project worthy. So either we look at leveraging money that we have and using some federal money if we can get it, or I guess it just gives you an idea how far out it is. I think the next slide there, Lindsay, is that the one? Okay, then there's also the option, and it doesn't do anything with the right-of-way width. It would be to repave, pulverize and repave that whole section just to make it a more drivable. It wouldn't do anything with the width, wouldn't do anything with making it more walkable for pedestrians. There'd still be no curb, gutter, or sidewalk along there. And we could do that for roughly $330,000, maybe plus another 20% because of with prices these days.
What does diesel trucks do to that kind of a road right there?
And that's the problem. If you look, as we go through, if we're planning on keeping diesel truck traffic on here, we'd want to go with the 4-inch asphalt surface instead of the standard 3-inch. So what we do is we beef up because we only usually use a lot of this sub material we grind as road-based material, and we would just get our grades we want, so it's not too steep, and lay a 4-inch layer to hold up for truck traffic.
But there's no trucks allowed on that road.
And that's why I said if we want to keep it where trucks can, and that's why we're trying, we try to push the trucks off because that's what really breaks those roads down.
So if you increase that to a 4-inch base, it'd go from 330 to 440,
Yeah,
just roughly.
roughly.
And then trucks could use it.
It'd be more truck usable as far as the surface holding up, but it won't help the walkability of that.
Yeah.
It's still the same standard 26 foot of asphalt width along that roadway.
We get no curb and sidewalk.
There would be no curb or sidewalk. It would just make a nice surface, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. It comes a long way because, that road with that constant truck traffic really starts to wear. Last time that road was rebuilt and ground down, it would have been in 99, 2000. I think they redid that road.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could just add, so you might recall we did adopt an ordinance that restricts truck traffic, and the way the state code allows you to do that is to have an engineering analysis, essentially saying that the condition of the road won't support the truck traffic. So I think it's assumed that as we rebuild the road, that we would rebuild it to accommodate truck traffic. So I could send you that ordinance if you need to.
Because, everything in the GPS world, from what we're told by trucker, directs traffic off onto that street when it's really not built for it.
The end game goal on this should open that up for truck traffic. It's an
Yeah.
off-ramp.
And that's why when we rebuild it, it'll have a center lane, two traffic lanes, but no on-street parking. That's the way you can get the width that you need to have that center lane in that 66 foot and still have curb, gutter, and sidewalk to make it more walkable.
How much money have we got in the street budget?
So we have 1.8 million in the transportation capacity fund, and that's a fund that we've established to essentially to add capacity to our street system. So, and that's just from general fund money that's been transferred over the years and it's built that fund up. The other one, and this is in your packet, I was just going to draw your attention to. So within your packet, I put those numbers, and Paul, I sent the presentation on to Paul, and he fixed, he added some text, but at the time I hadn't added that in there. So let me go to it. So 1.8 in Fund 42. We have $1 million in ARPA funds, but we've talked about that being programmed for water projects. But
How much did you say?
about 1 million. So I'm just trying to identify sources that you could use and prioritize, and I believe that one's available. We have $1.2 million in Fund 40, and that's been set aside for chip seals projects. So for the last couple of years, because we've been doing secondary water projects, we haven't done any chip seal. And the understanding is that once we finish some of these service areas that where we have the cuts in the road, that we would go back and chip seal those roads. But that's an option as well. What we don't know too is we've here recently started a transportation impact fee, you might recall, and that's not for future facilities. And we talked about the reason why that's not, but it will reimburse us for projects that we've already done that's added capacity to our street network. And so in the future, we could use those funds as those accumulate. There's some other funds potentially, in some of these other capital projects that you could potentially move around, but we'll talk more specifically about that through the budgeting process. But that's just a quick high level possibility of funding.
And that's why we broke it down in the way we did. You could see, okay, we have X amount of dollars, and let's do the most populated area, so roughly you could get for about almost $3 million up to 3150 there, where Country View Estates comes in, along there.
And have it done right.
And have it done all the way complete, yeah, curb, gutter, and sidewalk. So there is some walking capacity to be able to walk towards town. I mean, you're not going to get to town yet with the sidewalk system, but it would get you neighborhood to neighborhood up on that hillside.
Chip seal, have you figured any numbers on that? I think
We haven't. What we'll do is we'll probably look at once these service areas are done, if the council wants us to do chip seals, we'll put the price, because prices are so crazy right now, and then put it out to bid in like January of next year. So we get it early on the mark on their calendar, because all these companies start, even a road project like this, we'd want to do early on the calendar. So they start ordering and getting online their asphalt order for the year, and they can get a better price. Because chip seal, you don't want to do chip seal until July through August, because you need the heat, because as they lay the oil down and put the chips, you want the asphalt layer to be soft enough that as they lay those chips, they can push them into the asphalt and that the oil tacks it down and everything.
So would there be any advantage to just doing area 1 and then after that doing area 2, or would it be more an advantage to do 1 and 2 together?
The reason we broke area 1 out originally is because it has the canal section there. And if you go after federal money, you have to do historical documents on things. And they're real protective on doing historical studies on canals and limiting what you can do, because it is a historical waterway. Even though to us, it's just an irrigation canal, and whatever we would do to it would actually better it. But because it's federal money, they have, and that's why we broke it out separate. If we're not gonna do federal money, it's best to do it as one project, because you do it as a bigger project, you get better prices. And if I don't do it for a federal project, that price level is gonna come down. A good example, when we built 2000 West back in 2007, that was a federal highway project. We started it, back then there was only a few of us in that pot. Now it's opened up. We started planning on that in 2000. By the time we got to build it in 2007, that $1 million that we had would build half a mile of that road. So we went out and we borrowed some money to do the other half. The half that has the bridge on the north end, that's built to city specs. The other end is built to federal specs. I dare you to drive down there and tell me where the city spec, because all it is a different asphalt mix. It costs a lot more money, and then all the paperwork that's involved in doing the federal project. So what I'm getting is, we can build as good a road with our city standards as we can with the federal standards because of the cost of the federal money. Because anything with federal money costs you more. But that would be the best way to do it, is if you had the money to do from 2,300 to 3,150 as one project. You get more quantity, better price per quantity.
Any questions for Paul?
Now, we got more projects if you got more time.
Well, let's see. Yeah, I understand, but do you have any more questions about this? Sorry, Paul, this is...
I drove up there the other day and I was looking at that, and it seemed, as you go up, if you veered over just a little bit, that you could decrease the impact on the houses on the south side. But I didn't know how much it would impact the houses on the north side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the one issue is we only have X amount right of way that's already existing without us having to purchase. If we veer over, I mean, what we're working on is we will purchase a easement from the homeowner so that we have the right to work and improve those areas, but we won't own them in the end. We'll improve them, trying to make it lower impact to them. But the right of way is already set from years ago when it started out as a county road before it got annexed into the city.
Is it a sidewalk on both sides or just on the north?
It would have sidewalk on both sides. Curb, gutter, and sidewalk with a park strip. And that's always something where we can work with. If we want a wider sidewalk, we can narrow down a park strip, but that's usually where a lot of your utilities goes, is in that utility.
I think there's an 8-foot walk planned on
The north side, trying to keep our walking trail. This is just an idea of, because we know there's also an issue on 1200 South there, Rocket Road, and widen it. This would be what it would cost to widen it from 100 East, which is basically where the cemetery is, the road there, like going out to Palmer Pack, all the way up to basically the railroad tracks, which is 1,382 linear feet. Widen it, which is going to cost us about $1,500 or $1.5 million. And that would be widening it to 80 or 70?
That's an 80-foot
80-foot right of way, that's what I was thinking. If you look where the church is, you notice the church, ever since the 80s when they built the church, it had that wide. And that was the plan all along, is to widen it. And with the homes going in and the townhomes, because there's homes going there and townhomes, and most of those people are commuters. And so most of the traffic will be probably heading back to the freeway through Elwood. And so widening across the railroad tracks and on the west side at this point is not to say it's not going to happen in the future, but the most important part is the part going east, and then working with Elwood City to widen the rest of it out.
Like we'd want to secure some kind of an agreement with Elwood before we go through that kind of expense, because if they're not willing to widen that road,
yeah,
I don't know what good it's going to do to widen this one. All we're going to do is just put more traffic on it. And
Well, it is planned as a minor arterial road. We do need to coordinate with Elwood, and what I'd propose is to try to coordinate with them and do a corridor preservation project through the county. But unfortunately, that's just the way that road networks are, is they run through different jurisdictions, and
because of the narrowing of that bridge, that becomes kind of a safety factor.
Bridge is real small.
It's-
widen the bridge for
We,
now?
we could just widen part of it right there. I mean, that would do a whole bunch, but it would be an 80-foot wide bridge with a walking deck on it, for sidewalk.
The other thing, if I could interject, is that there are subdivisions that are being developed along this corridor. And so as part of the development process, we exact the right-of-way improvements, which with the pre-annexation agreement, we required them to dedicate the entire width that we needed for right-of-way and also to do the curb gutter and sidewalk. And so we'd want to do, and we're working right now, with our franchise agreement with Rocky Mountain Power, we got them, I don't know if you remember this resolution, we got them to commit to move their power lines to the new placement, and we talked to them about, anyways, we got that also resolved. So I think in the near future, the plan is that with the development, as it exists and as they install the improvements, that we'd want to try to coordinate and do our improvements at the same time or close to the same time.
So on those power poles that are along there, you're talking on the south side of the road?
Correct.
Yes.
And how far were they, how far were they going to move them? Or are you going to bury it, or?
No, they'll still be overhead.
Oh.
They'll be roughly, what, 10, 12 feet?
To the south?
To the south.
Move to the south,
Oh.
Which, other than the Christensen's property, that's all on the developer's property, that's in their works. And working with the Christensens to be able to relocate that at the same time.
Yeah. So right now, we do have, for example, in the bond for the subdivision improvement for Phase 1, the right-of-way improvements for Third West and for also Rocket Road. And so, and we're working with the Christensens right now on right-of-way acquisition as well. But if you look at that cost estimate, the biggest, I think it's just a lump sum, I think it's $500,000, is just the bridge itself. 648.
Sean, we're still negotiating then on Christensen's land.
Yeah, so, right, I mean, the process is that we've got the appraisal, and it's a UDOT certified appraiser, who does right-of-way acquisitions and looks at all the factors, including the existing improvements and compensating them, for the improvements lost, to their personal property that we would acquire. And so I've ordered the appraisal, I haven't gotten it yet. I'm hoping to actually submit within the next couple of weeks to the corridor preservation plan or grant for this project. But we also have to, we can only have two projects out at the same time. I need to close one out in order to have capacity, for this project.
So, and then this is one that we're committed on. It was part of the agreement with IFA and Stoltz Equipment, and that's that intersection at 1650. And that, as you see there, it has a time frame of 2025 to have that done, and that's approximately $760,000. We acquired the right-of-way through the corridor preservation fund. And so that was, city council kind of directed to look at that commercial area to maybe enhance some commercial growth out there. Okay, and then this is the one, now this in here doesn't have any curb, gutter, and sidewalk. We haven't put a plan together on that yet, but that would just be to improve that surface on 1000 West from Main Street to our city limits, which is the other side, south of the overpass. And that would be to build that structure to a 4-inch, because we know how much truck traffic comes down that road. There's tremendous amount that comes from Walmart and Procter & Gamble and the landfill. I mean, you think all the trucks from northern Box Elder County comes down that road to the landfill.
Yeah, if you see, so back in 2017, when we had our transportation plan done, they did traffic counts. The counters are able to detect if it's truck traffic or not, and you'll see that 12% of the traffic in 2017 was affiliated to trucks, almost 13%. And typically, Horrocks, it's different for different roads in the classification, but 3 to 5% is sort of on typical roads what you would see. This is a project that we put, and I don't know if you remember, but back in January, you adopted a priority list for the corridor preservation. This is a project, so typically, and what the city's focused on is, in fact, we were the first city to apply for and receive a corridor preservation fund, and proactively went out to acquire corridors before they were developed over. And that's sort of the basis of the fund, is that it's cheaper to acquire these corridors now than later. And so that's why the state, instituted this funding source, and the county also enabled it to occur here in Box Elder County with essentially a $10 fee for every vehicle registration. So we focused on corridor acquisition. But a few years ago, I think it was actually our Senator, Scott Sandel, worked on legislation that changed and allowed it to also be used for maintenance, which we haven't really focused on. A lot of the smaller communities in Box Elder County don't really have the ability to, look. There's not as much pressure for them to acquire corridors, but they still wanted to use the funds, and that was sort of the basis of allowing these smaller cities that don't use it for corridor preservation to actually access some of these funds. But we're not excluded either, and so that's a thought, and that's another funding source that we could apply, is to try to have the county grant us funds, for this project. And I think there's some rationale, since it services unincorporated county and some of these county facilities, but we haven't historically done it. But the resolution you adopted, the one that I submitted to the county, would allow you to, would allow us to do that if that's something you wanted us to try to submit for. But it would have to be done in the next couple weeks. I think the deadline's March 1st.
So Paul, Iowa String, if this thing happens, the road's gonna be the same size.
It'll be the same pavement width, which is roughly 26 feet of pavement at this time until we,
We're willing to put that road in down Iowa String, but we're really not willing to do it up on the hill. I mean, no,
without the full build out, the width and right away.
yeah,
Well, because you'd be looking at some of the same type of money, and we just figured, we know the key priorities, the city council is at 10th North. 1,000 West is good, we don't have as many subdivision that comes right off of there like we do on 10th North. And those homes that are built right on the road on 10th North that have been built over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
Since they got water up on that hill.
Yeah.
And this would just make it a better driving road. Now, it did, like I said, no, it won't be a walkable road. It's still, see, I think the gentleman left, it was the walk, it still wouldn't have curb, gutter, and sidewalk. But to get that, you'd probably be looking at that $5 million price tag to be able to get that and get drainage and everything taken care of to make that one that kind of a width of road.
I mean, this is like, I'm sure this is going to offend some people just because it's coming from me, but this is like the family budget. I mean, does a guy want to spend 5 years worth of budget on one road? Or can we spread it out and try to cover more roads to keep the life of all the roads going, rather than socking all our money in one area? And at the same time, I've had several citizens in that area, they're upset if we stretch that road out. It is going to affect some of those people, as we all know, negatively. It seems to me,
On 10th North?
on 10th North, it seems to me, even though we have people that want to have a sidewalk, we can't afford it. It's not in the family budget. We only have so much money in the budget. So I can see a way just quickly that we can do all the projects within the money we've got if we don't focus at 5.5 million on that 10th North up there. I'm sure that's going to make people upset, but this makes more people, spreads the money out to more people and more populous than just a few.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
And maybe Paul could help, but let me start this comment and then I'll let Paul fill in all the details because he's much better at this than I am. But to your point, Lyle, we do have an obligation. In fact, we track the service life of our roads, and that's associated with the accounting requirements. So and I'll give it over to Paul. I think
We usually do a study, and we got one budgeted for this next year. Every 4 years, we have to do a study to meet the auditor's standard for the federal audit.
We've seen those.
And you've seen them, yeah. I present them every time we do them. And like I said, we're doing one this year because it's up on that year to make sure that we're trying to meet and if you remember right, the city had to set a standard to have this much of the city streets meet this much existing surface life, like 25 years of surface life remaining. And so our goal is, as we do projects and improve the roads, the ones that are broken down, some of them, to your point, there might be a road that's not real big, that might be worse than others. And so we don't focus as much on that road as we do other roads that's going to bring more safety factors to more people. But to try and meet those certain surface life standards. And when we look at those roads, they'll tell us, because we have an independent auditor come out, the T-Square Center out of Logan, that focuses on roads. They'll do the studies, and they'll tell us which roads we really look at. And they'll even give us suggestions on what kind of treatments to do, whether you need to do a whole rebuild, pave and pulverize. And but I think that's where the city council has to, I mean, we can give you and say, these are what the costs are going to be, but you're the ones that have the hard decisions, in my mind.
Is the pave and pulverize, just take 2 inches, grind 2 inches off and?
No, we pulverize it down to the existing base.
Oh.
Yeah, that's just a grind and repave. But we always pulverize it down to make sure that we find any soft spots so that we can fix those at the time.
Yeah.
And then we haul off any excess material and then repave it with whatever we look at, either the 4-inch or the normal city street has a 3-inch overlay or asphalt section. And we use that good grindings. We haul it, we store some of it, we use a lot of it to make the slope, because we try to keep our slopes between 1% and 2% coming off the crown. That way they're not so steep. If you've lived in some older neighborhoods, they would overlay or either grind down 2 inches and overlay. And then what happens, that crown just keeps getting steeper and steeper. And so we try to keep the ground flat as we can, but keep the water coming off.
The chipping's a big thing in my mind, because we've tore into those streets.
Yeah.
Broke them.
And
They need to be sealed off, or we're gonna start losing those.
yeah,
streets.
you can't, anytime you cut a street, you can't make it as it new. But at least when we chip it and seal it, we're actually sealing up the cracks so that the moisture, because moisture and water's the worst thing for a road. It gets into the subgrade material, and then soft spots develop. And
Well, for us to make decisions on these projects and prioritizing them, we need to know what the seal price is gonna be, so I'm asking.
in the next couple of weeks, I'll get you a number, the best we can for what's going on with the situation right now. Because asphalt oil and sealing oil, that was a byproduct. But with the way the refinery's working more, it's not, they can refine it, and that's why it became a premium price. It was just garbage, and asphalt was an easy place to get rid of it. So I'll work on getting you a cost of what it's gonna cost to chip and seal, because we always put the fog coat on top of the chips to keep them down so they don't cause windshield damages and things.
As engineer, does he help put these numbers?
Yeah, he does. Because he's got a feel, because he's got cities that are doing projects like this, so he knows where the prices are coming in. I mean, right now, we got out the bid right now, our sewer line project on the east side of town. And that's one that is impact fee driven that we have to spend and do. And so those will be awarded, coming back to you in a couple of weeks on that project. We'll have I'll see about working on some chip seals, what it's gonna cost per square yard.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is I'll sit down and give you an idea what it would cost to cover the roads that we've already cut so far with the secondary projects from Service Area 2, 3, and then 4 and 5 that we're doing now.
How many miles of road is that?
We've done probably roughly about 15 miles of roads.
15?
Yeah, we have about 45 miles of road. So probably 15 to 20 miles of road by the time we get through at the end of this project.
Done with 5.
Yeah. So,
Now, if I may,
yeah.
I agree, you know, and the fun thing about the council is we can disagree, and it's okay. But I think we do need to chip seal, but I still think we need to we're growing. This area up here is growing, and we're putting more traffic, and we're putting more people on there. We can't afford to go all the way to we can't do that, you know, but I think we ought to at least start somewhere and do a little bit each year or every couple of years and start to expand in the areas where the city's growing because, you know, that's my 2 cents worth. I think, you know, if we were able to go in and do this first section on 2300 to 2660, that's a big step, you know, and that's only $650,000, and you know, add that in there and do a lot of chip sealing. I just think we need to be proactive in making sure that
I agree.
We're adapting with our growth as these areas grow. So,
And that's why the council gets to make these decisions, because, I mean, every project on here is a worthy project, but it all comes down to what funds, how much funds you have, you know? Because all those projects impact all of us in one way or the other. So
we'll make a decision in a couple of weeks.
I will have some costs for chip sealing in a couple of weeks. And then you guys can start working with it through the budget. Because it wouldn't be a project any of these projects wouldn't be out of this year's building schedule. Because they're gonna have their asphalt schedule all laid out, as busy as things are in northern Utah. So it'd be in next year's budget. So we're talking summer of 2023.
Okay.
Would be the build time.
Just one more
Yep.
question. I'm gonna shift gears on you. Are we okay with funds for the secondary water at this point? Is there enough money there to finish what we've committed to do?
Yep. I mean, I haven't seen, I mean, we still got a big hunk that's gonna go out, but right now we're still doing good. You know, we have our reserves, I mean, from our culinary already. And so right now we're good. And we should be able to complete everything. Rups are a little bit behind on laying pipe. And a lot of that has to do with when they had a hard time getting the pipe to get started. But the beauty of it is they've got the pump stations set in the canals. Now we're working with Rocky Mountain Power because they're another hang-up to get the power to the pump sites. But as the pump sites get ready to come on, even though Rups are still putting in pipe on the north end, everything's valved off, so we can start bringing sections of that on, and people can start hooking up this summer on sections of it.
When were you going to be able to go across 3rd East to the west, to the east?
It'll be, I think, April, because the UDOT has a time frame when you don't cut the roads, because they want them patched as soon as. So I think April 1st, they can start working on 3rd East and that side. So, because you have to have them, I think April 1st to October 15th is their window that they want you. I mean, they'll allow you in there for emergencies, but not for schedule work.
They'll
So-
be done with everything else before then, won't they?
Yeah, they still have pipe down in Harris subdivision and different areas. They still got a lot of,
that's right.
and then they have a lot of services they have to come back in and put in.
Right.
That they haven't drilled under the road yet. So, that doesn't mean they don't start across 3rd East. They just
Oh, yeah,
can't work
that's right.
on 3rd East.
That's right.
So they can go into David Drive and into the northern part of Holmgren Estates and lay pipe. They just can't do anything in the state road section.
Oh, any other questions for Paul?
I have one question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been kind of following the legislative issues, and you probably have been too. Can you tell me a little bit about metering? Obviously, secondary water is what cities are doing to prepare for growth.
Yeah.
And of course, we're way ahead of that, which I was so proud of that as I was listening to the conversations. There's so many cities that are just barely coming to that conclusion, right? But the question I had is about meters. And obviously, there's House Bill 242 coming out. What can you tell me about how prepared are we with secondary meters?
We're 100% ahead of the game.
Absolutely.
Because this is a bill that's reared its head several times about mandating metering to secondary water companies. And when we elected to go with secondary water, we knew that the most feasible way to pay for it and the way to, because we did have some that wasn't metered for years, that we could see the only way that people would conserve and was through metering. And so city council got ahead of the game. It's reared ahead, and it'll probably go because the drought has really pushed a lot of water bills that are based on conservation. But what it does do, but it does us no good, is they're trying to get some state money set aside as matching grant money to some of these irrigation companies, these secondary companies, for putting in the meters. But it's only for existing. So since all of ours are new, that money's not available to us.
And so that's kind of what I thought as I was listening about it. I thought, we're way ahead of all of this.
We're way ahead of it, but we wouldn't qualify, and they're trying to use some state money and some Bureau money, which is got my mind went blank. Bureau of Reclamation, the federal money that deals with water.
I got to make a comment here because we have, all of the secondary water we have is metered right now. And so what happened last summer is there were the canal company was getting several complaints, particularly from their ditch riders, that the city was using, what was it, 20 cubic feet per second or something like
16 CFS.
16 feet CFS. And what Paul did is he went to the canal company and says, no, wait a minute. I can show you to a gallon what water we were using, and it was about 2.6.
We never pulled more than 1.5 CFS out of it.
My calculation was 2.6, and so
they were talking on the peak. So
on the peak, but that was the peak, 2.6, and so I thought, I know what 2.6 cubic feet per second is, and you haven't got a stream. A farmer hasn't got a stream at 2.6. But what we had was about a 3.5, and I'm thinking, I know how much water is going down a 3.5 CFS stream, and that's the whole city. That's the whole city was being at the peak time was 2.6 or 1 point whatever.
One ditch.
One ditch.
Yeah.
That serviced the whole city.
Everyone we had in.
But the amazing thing about it is Paul was able to go back to the canal company and say, oh, no, wait a minute, I can show you to the gallon what we're using. And it's because
we measure it coming out of the canal, we measure it to the individuals we sell it to.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's a lot of cities that are saying, give us 8 years.
Yeah,
give us 8 years. We've got to have 8 years. We're not ready. And as I was listening to that conversation this week, to the legislative debates and the cities and towns are preparing for things, I thought, Tremonton's ready. We're there. We've arrived. So thank you, Paul.
All right, Paul, thank you. All right, looks like do we have any calendar items, Sean, that we need to discuss?
Actually.
Okay.
Lindsay's going to pull up. It's a separate presentation. So I wanted to make you aware that the city has the draft integrated land use plan available for review and comment. It's on the city's website, and it's on the homepage, and you can see that dashed line. If you click on that icon, you can pull it up and download it and review it. We started the plan, so it's called an integrated land use plan because we first did our transportation plan, and the idea was that land use and transportation have a unique relationship, and to understand where our future transportation corridors were going to be was imperative to be able to lay out future land uses. And so this plan tries to marry both of those plans and other plans, frankly, that we've done over the years. All the years run together, but I think we started right at the start of the pandemic. So was that in 2020? 2019?
2020.
Somewhere in there. What I remember about it is we changed the way we did public input for the plan, and frankly, I think it's more successful where we did it online. And so in the appendix, if you go, you can see the three methods that they received public input on. And it was essentially an interactive map where people could leave comments. There was a visual preference survey, and there was a questionnaire as well. And so there'll also be public hearings through the process where the public can comment. So we will hold, the idea is we'll hold this version of the plan constant through the review process, and the Planning Commission is tasked with making a recommendation to the City Council, and they will do that, but their recommendations will come with notes so that you can see their comments and what their recommendations are, with the plan being constant, and based upon your final approval of the plan, then they'll go back and make some changes. I think there's frankly lots of room for discussion, and there's some things in the plan, frankly, that I'm not sure about as far as how they will impact the city, if they will be good or bad. I think there's going to be some really good discussions. I talked to the consultant, and we talked about, that's sort of what the process envisions is a healthy discussion and debate, and ultimately, with the decision makers with making some of those decisions. So what we envision, though, is we're trying to schedule it for the next Planning Commission. So if you scroll to the next, February 22nd, and we may or may not be able to pull this off based upon the consultant's availability, but the idea is that we'd have a joint meeting where the consultant, Planning Commission, and City Council would get an overview of the plan provided by the consultant. And from there on out, the consultant will work with the Planning Commission, potentially by Zoom meeting or by Zooming, just as a cost saving measure. And ultimately, they'll give you a recommendation for your final consideration. This was a plan that UDOT helped participate and fund. We got a grant for $50,000 from UDOT, which made this possible. And there's a lot of great, planning and effort that went into the plan with the consultant, using GIS and other modeling to help us come up with a plan along with their knowledge and analysis. So anyway, so that's kind of where we're at in the process. I'll keep you posted and let you know. The consultant was going to finalize his availability, I think, tomorrow. So I hope to be able to inform everyone and coordinate the actual date of this joint meeting.
This is open to the public?
Absolutely, yeah.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I may. So, Christy, you brought up a good point. This is an opportunity for the public to pull this plan up and go through it and come and give some very great discussion on where we want to go in the future. And I've talked to the Planning Commission, and that's what we want to do. We want to engage everyone in this process. So I encourage the public to pull this plan up, look at it, and come share with us. And remember, it's a plan. That means it can change.
right?
Absolutely.
It's not written in stone, and so it's an exciting part of the process. I'm excited to see where this goes.
It would be at 5:30. Is there, unless we need to accommodate a different time, but the planning commission typically meets at 5:30.
Okay. But it might not be on the 22nd.
It may not. I'll know for sure. Hopefully tomorrow is what the consultant told me.
That's all, which is the planning.
Okay. But there will be further discussion on the 8th and then again on the 22nd, for
With the
sure.
planning commission.
Mm-hmm. And you're welcome to come, obviously, to those meetings and probably not participate in the discussion as much as listen to the discussion and
Right.
such. So the other, Paul touched upon this, back in 19, we identified a project that we need to do with sewer impact fees. And we identified the date which we needed to conclude or complete that project. And it is, if you go to the next slide, I think there's a map. I wish it was bigger. But it's Project 3. It's essentially the East Main sewer line replacement. And I don't know if it goes as far. Does it go as far as the Four Corners, Paul? Or?
1150.
1150. Okay. Down to the main trunk line for the city, which would be essentially in the river bottoms.
The sewer line out.
Project number 3.
Right, yeah, right there. Thank you, Lindsay. So the bid opening is going to be February 23rd. Paul's talked about the need to award the bid just for purposes of the contractor being able to secure the materials, the manholes. Manholes are getting hard to.
I talked to Blaine today, and that's exactly the issue, is manholes.
Yeah.
In order to get it started, they gotta start with manholes, I guess, so.
Yeah. So anyways, that's coming up. And then lastly, just the Utah League of Cities and Towns Conference. That's all the calendar items that I'm aware of.
Let's see, do you want to give us, we got a little more territory to cover here. Let's see, Sean, can you give us let's see, the city manager reports?
I can. So this is, we talked about this last week when we approved Curtis Roberts' professional service agreement. Curtis has been with the city for 20 years. We formalized an actual contract, and essentially, and Mark touched upon this earlier in the meeting, but essentially procurement that does not require bids includes professional services contracts when approved by the city council. And that's a perfect example where Curtis, obviously, with the amount of time that he's been involved with the city and the knowledge that we have of him, it made sense to kind of invoke this policy rather than going through the charades of putting out for bid when we knew in the end we were going to pick Curtis. It's kind of disingenuous to do a process like that. And so that's what this provision is. It doesn't really benefit anyone in doing that. So at any rate, I wanted to show you that policy. The next is the employee service awards. This was brought up by Wes as it related to, and that little side note is a typo. This is out of our handbook, our personnel policies and procedures that essentially provides awards for employees based upon their years of service. For some reason, when I was here, it never applied to the fire department. Well, it should have, as far as the code. It doesn't necessarily, our policy doesn't necessarily exclude the fire department employees or the recreation employees, but at any rate, so we did take a look, and I'll show you at the end of the slide. You can see it a little closer, but to Wes's point, there's a lot of people who've served many years in those positions, notably Wes, actually, at 41 years, which I know he didn't want me to say that, but that's the facts.
Like that.
And there's many others who have served decades. And so we did determine what that cost would be to recognize the past years of service, which I'll show you here at the end. But it was essentially, I think it was $6,500 for fire department employees. And we have a great staff of volunteers in the food pantry, which again, they maybe also merit some employee service awards along with some recreation employees as well. I think those were the only categories that we identified that administratively haven't been recognized through this program that the city has. So the next, here it is. Yeah, so here's the catch-up provision. Oh, go ahead.
I would be okay with removing city councilman from that, honestly.
Okay, I can't remember. Okay.
I would be too. Absolutely.
So
firefighters about 6,500, food pantry volunteers 1,900, part-time recreation 2,200. So if you go to the next, maybe it's actually the end of the packet, Lindsay. Go if you would to the, well, let me go to the DRC report. If you're curious, I'll just let you know at the end of your packet, you can really zoom in and see the years of service. And maybe we want to do that as a group just to understand sort of the scope of it looks like Lindsay's going to do that for us. Who's 37? Is that Mike Knorr? Jeff Euler, 31. Yeah. So we also have the volunteers for the food pantry, and that's really what keeps the food pantry going, is not only the contribution of the community, but those who are willing to volunteer at the food pantry. We've had some who've passed away who also had long tenures of volunteer service. And then you can see the recreation employees.
Not as many of them, they don't always stick around.
aren't we on that list? Was it? Aren't we on that list? Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So Lindsay, if you would go back to the so the DRC report, these are just subdivisions that are somewhere in the approval process. These are administrative decisions, essentially the city staff applying the development ordinances to applications that have been submitted. And Harvest Acres Phase 2, this is just south of Rocket Road. Hopefully you can orient yourself there, but their next phase is I think was approved actually at the last DRC meeting because it complied with all the code requirements. You would go to the next slide. Here's a close-up of the actual subdivision where you can see the road layout. If you would, so Mac Tremonton, and maybe this will get a different name as it continues through the process, but I think Mac Builders is the one who's acquired the property. It's Craig Christensen's property, right off 2300 West. And it is, I believe, 8,000 square foot lots. Paul, that sounds right? So the next picture will show you the close-up, single-family detached housing. There's still some work to do on this layout. It's going to shift a little bit. I think they're going to reroute there's a sewer and a secondary water line that is located within some of their lots, so they'll relocate that line. So it's going to change a little bit, but you can get a sense of essentially what they're proposing. Typically, I try to discourage cul-de-sacs, but in some cases, where topography and other constraints limit, cul-de-sacs make the best sense for the road network. And there's one cul-de-sac here with a knuckle, but it'll stub into Chris Sorensen's property. So.
Where does it stub in on the west end?
Both. I don't know if you could show. Yeah, right there's one, and then also, yeah, they'll need to do temporary turnarounds, so they won't. That'll be different. And as we get to the actual development agreement, we'll show you all the unusual elements associated with this subdivision. We do with any subdivision, as you know.
Yeah, let's just be careful with that 35 on one exit,
Oh, right, we talked about that. I think there's a little bit more. They're gonna lose one lot for a storm drain basin. Ultimately, the storm drain, would flow down to that regional basin that we're trying to acquire at the very south end of this service area. But in the interim, they would lose some building lots until that storm drain basin's available. That's assuming that we're able to acquire it. The Minlove Harris subdivision, this is the old hospital, and the redevelopment of that. It does take a rezone for, I think, the northern portion of the property. I think they picked up a parcel that was owned by the county, and that parcel, I think, was R110. But based upon sort of the access and the ownership, it makes sense that that potentially a rezone could be considered. There's a lot of things that the DRC is talking to these individuals about. One, off-site storage or public storage is not allowed in the zone. We want to try to de-emphasize that central access that's between the health department and this development and have a more dedicated access that services this subdivision and discourages or de-emphasize that common easement or access easement between the two properties. So there's some work left to be done. We talked to them about the orientation of the townhomes, for example, and the streetscape and things like that. So this was one that the Planning Commission reviewed and recommended approval of the rezone. And I was at the Planning Commission meeting when the second time that was discussed. The first time I think I left to catch up with Dustin, but I do have some concerns about the rezone. It's essentially half-acre lot zoning, and they're proposing moving it to R110. And we're going to talk about it in DRC about the feasibility. This road project that we just talked about of 1,000 north. You might recall that we have an overlay zone that tries to protect and pushes building back. So we have an enlarged setback. It's a 50-foot setback for both our benefit and the property owner's benefit, because the further they can push it away from the road, the more easy their access is going to be into their driveway as we push the road out and do fill slopes, essentially. And so I think there's some consideration that the DRC would like to discuss and just identify the feasibility of rezoning the property. I mean, it's also down in a hole. There's just a few issues. I don't think we should rezone property when there's no availability really to service that many units. And I just feel like there's some things that should be discussed at the DRC regarding the feasibility of actually zoning the property to a higher unit count. So.
You got animals on both sides of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a huge concern.
And zoning is discretionary. It's a legislative decision that you make, and factoring in lots of decisions, and certainly that could be one of those. There is some R110 zoning around it, but all along that south side, I'd have to look at the zoning, but the land use is mostly larger lots, and
It's just
And-
down below is where the R110 is, that's it.
Yeah, and I think maybe above too, there's,
Across the canal and across the road,
That's what I
but all the
mean,
neighbors are not,
By Mark's house.
that's a concern.
to the south.
so, fire access, I mean, that's another issue. So anyways, we're going to talk about it. Chris actually, our engineer, has done the cut sheets for this section. He's done some of the preliminary engineering for this section of the road, so we'll be able to benefit with that engineering and talk about it tomorrow.
So that access going south, or that'll be those 3 lots, that'll be a private drive?
Yep.
That's what's being proposed. And they're saying that the sewer's going to go, they're going to try to get an easement to the neighbor to the west. East. Yeah, absolutely.
They didn't give him easement.
They did. I wouldn't.
They took it away. They said no.
Okay, yeah. So, and I wasn't sure that was going to flow or connect, but that was one of the other things I felt like we should talk about, at the DRC and just see the feasibility of actually sewering those lots. So anyways, the planning commission did a great job with the information they had. And so we just wanted to dig a little deeper before we brought it to you for consideration.
All right. Well, Paul, you have any comments or anything for us?
Send you out the end of month report.
You got everything? Council reports. Let's see. Why don't we go ahead and see if there's any council reports? Rick?
I won't be here next time. I've got the water seminar in St. George, so I'll be down with you and Paul.
Yeah, we'll all be down there. So that may be something we might want to take into consideration if.
The only issue, I think the only thing that's sort of driving it is potentially awarding the bid, and Paul would know better than I sort of how critical that is.
That's all.
If it
You're
wasn't
the
for
only one.
the manhole aspect,
I'm the only one down there.
then it isn't critical, because there's plenty of time to get it, but
Yeah, we'll be
I'll talk
gone.
to Blaine.
We'll be gone.
March 1st.
Well, I'll
Or
talk
it's
to whoever is a low bidder and see what they say.
March 1st.
Oh, right.
But there's still 4 of us here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not like all of us are going. It's
Oh,
just
you're
me.
gone?
we won't have a.
Did you say you're not going to be here?
I have 3.
Not on
3 or
March
5 or
1st.
so.
Okay.
Is that what we're talking about, is March 1st?
Yeah.
March
Okay.
1st.
So we'll have a quorum, I guess. It'll be possible. Will we have a quorum here?
Yeah, we'll have 3 of us.
Does 3 make a quorum?
For some reason, I've drawn a blank here.
Well, there's 5.
I think it is.
So 3 and 5 is
3 would
quorum.
be
It's a 6-member council. So Lyle's actually a member of the governing body.
That was my question.
Yeah, so let me check for sure. It's the form of
Yeah, 'cause
government
we
we
can
are as a
cancel it.
6-member council, which I know doesn't seem right, but that's indeed what it is.
We haven't crossed this bridge, but only maybe once or twice.
I can have all the data to you, so it wouldn't have to be a long meeting.
Okay.
Well, it's just a matter of a majority or not.
If we've got a quorum or not is the only question. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming.
You do it, I do.
All right. Brett, do you have any questions for us?
Nope.
Okay. Lyle,
Nothing.
I don't have anything either.
Me neither.
good to go?
I make a motion, meeting,
No,
We gotta go to
Make a
close.
meeting.
can't do that. We got to go into closed session for just a few minutes.
I'll make a motion, we go into closed session.
I'll second that motion.
And moved and
forgot
seconded,
about
we go into closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Brett says aye. Okay, we got some things we got to